Chapter 1055. After removing the defensive canopy, Strange closed the eye of Agamotto, and the green runes of the gem of time dissipated from his divine mountain. Strange opened his eyes with a look of horror. He whispered, "He's not human. He's something created by someone. He's the robot." Captain May said solemnly, "What do you mean?" "Another Ultron. I was sent here to deal with Ulysses Crow, who might invade Wakanda. But this enemy, he gives me a very strange feeling." "You say he's a robot? How can you tell?" "I've tested him in a parallel world. His body is made of vibranium, and he lacks the adaptability of humans. In a parallel world, we paid a considerable price to destroy him, and then there was a strong energy interference, so I couldn't see what happened next. But I'm sure that his body is made of countless parts. It's a very complicated part. Unlike the current electronic system of motors and processors, its body is made of pure mechanical parts. It uses mechanical force to conduct movement and work. The power that drives it is not electricity or internal combustion engine, but mechanical energy. This is a robot with pure mechanical movement." Strange was a little absent-minded. Chin Ong seemed to have thought of something. He said in the body of the Black Wizard, "If it's pure mechanical energy, then it means that the machine in front of us is not an intelligent robot, but someone's marionette, just like I am now." Strange remembered the vibranium weapon that was controlled by vibration and murmured, "It's vibranium." Vibranium has an amazing conductive ability and a keen sense of touch to vibration. Vibration can cause the internal stress of vibranium to conduct in a strange way. Vibranium can convert mechanical energy into internal energy, and it can also convert internal energy into mechanical energy efficiently. This gives it the strange ability to store energy. And vibration is a kind of mechanical energy. "You're right." A voice suddenly came from behind them. "Can you open a door for me, mage?" Strange turned around and saw a man in black armor and a leopard mask outside the mirror dimension. The man greeted him. "No need to look. I can't see the dimension you're in. I can only see and talk to you through the communicator of our warriors in the dimension." With a wave of Strange's right hand, a crack appeared on the mirror dimension barrier, and the Black Panther jumped in. At this time, the warriors of Wakanda had already roared angrily and went up to fight with the silver figures. Their movements were vigorous, and they were skilled in martial arts. Often, there would be a few people working together with tacit understanding. 2 people would hold shields to cover. A few people would go up to assassinate, and a few people would shoot energy beams from the back with vibranium spears. However, Silver Shadow Man did not care about the vibranium spears that occasionally pierced his body. Instead, with a casual flick of his wrist, he could cause a tremor in the air. An invisible and formless shockwave surged out, and it could destroy the Wakanda warriors' head-on encirclement and send them flying. If they did not have a vibranium shield made of the same material to protect them, even a heavy mining truck would have been flipped over and smashed into pieces. The attacks that landed on Silver Shadow Man's body only trembled, causing his silver body to shine with purple light. The purple light seeped into Silver Shadow Man's body along the strange patterns, and it was completely replenishing his energy. The Black Panther became even more solemn. He said to the Chima you bead in his palm, "Surui, are the scan results out?" The other side replied, "Don't go up first. Those United Nations commissioner were right. The enemy is a puppet made of vibranium and is controlled by Crow from a distance. He uses gravity to transmit fine vibrations, and through complicated vibrations, he controls this body. This body can turn all attacks, including energy attacks and physical attacks, into his power. Rash attacks will only make him stronger. If that's the case..." Strange put his palms up and said, "I can banish him to another dimension and cut off Ulysses Crow's control over him. Crow can interfere with the stability of the dimensional tunnel. You can't open the dimensional door under the interference of gravitational waves." Su Rue replied, "It's useless. The problem is not with this puppet, but with Crow behind the scenes. The Black Panther said coldly, "My warriors may be brave, but can't you see that this puppet's defense is too weak? Crow is thousands of times stronger than this puppet. He's just using this body to test us and mock us. He wants to test the level of Wakanda's power, so he parried the attacks of those warriors. He's evaluating the level of Wakanda's warriors. When he thinks he's ready, then we'll see him fight personally." Strange and Steve looked at each other and said, "That's why we have to get rid of him cleanly without exposing too much of our strength. That way, Crow will think that he's not ready and will go back to accumulate his strength. If we fight Crow now, Wakanda can't afford such a loss." The Black Panther said, "We have to get through this." He turned to look at the three of them and said, "I need your strength." Because we're not Wakanda's own strength, so we're not afraid that Ulysses Crow will figure out the trump card you've prepared for him, right?" Steve asked. The Black Panther said calmly, "Yes, we need the strength of the United Nations now." Princess Su Rue's voice came from the Chimayu bead in his hand. The United Nations sent 3 commissioners to investigate the humanitarian disaster. Now 2 of them are standing here with their weapons and have become brave warriors. Only one is there taking care of the injured dutifully. So the 2 of you sneaked in to spy on Wakanda's situation? In the end, there's only one United Nations coordinator working. I've seen your surveillance video and have long been suspicious. There's only one person working every day, preparing documents and investigating the nutrition and medical conditions of the people of Wakanda. She said discontentedly, "All the investigation documents are from the hands of another person. He's now organizing the rescue in the rear. I think he's the only real United Nations official. You're all spies sent to spy." Strange almost burst out laughing. After uttering half a word, Strange suddenly remembered that he could not ruin his own comrade's reputation. He forcefully swallowed back the rest of his words. "Of course he knows he's covering for you. After all, you have to find someone who can work as a cover." Princess Su Rue said relentlessly. Steve had to explain, "We're just here to help you. SHIELD found out about Ulysses Crow's attack on your spies, so they sent me to investigate." The mask on the Black Panther's face was suddenly removed, revealing his face. "Captain, of course I trust you, but I don't trust SHIELD." Just as they were in a deadlock, the Black Wizard controlled by Chin Ong had to interrupt. "Hey, friends, let's put down this little dispute first, okay? The robot over there seems to have collected the data. He needs more data now." Before he finished speaking, he saw the silver shadow move. It was incredibly fast. Like a stream of light, it directly appeared in front of Wakabi and punched him. In this situation, Wakabi had almost no time to do anything. He could only subconsciously raise his left arm and open a vibranium shield. With a loud bang, a violent shockwave exploded forth. In an instant, this energy poured out in torrents, as if it was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Then, the vibranium shield on Wakabi's left arm suddenly distorted and exploded under the unparalleled shockwave. Wakabi's left arm was twisted into an unnatural position. The white bone stubble pierced through his skin. Under the intense pain, he roared and was thrown out heavily. He hit the ground in the distance and fainted without a sound. The warriors of the tribes at the border covered their chiefs and retreated. The Black Panther did not care about his good friend. He pressed on the Chimayuju and said, "Su Rue, did you find its weakness?" "Its power is very mature and stable. Vibranium is the most compatible material with vibration waves. All the methods I have to restrain vibranium are related to vibration. The only weapon that can break the defense of vibranium is a sonic weapon. But now we're facing a sonic weapon made from vibranium. Its structure is very stable and it can absorb the specific vibration that destroys vibranium. Vibranium is almost indestructible. Regardless of whether we can find its weakness or not, we have to attack." Steve said, He raised the round shield and rushed forward to block Silver Shadow Man. The fist that contained a powerful vibration wave hit the round shield, and Captain America almost could not hold the shield in his hand. But at this moment, Silver Shadow Man, or rather Crow, who was behind him, showed a surprised expression. He opened his mouth and spoke with a strange voice that sounded like metal rubbing against each other. A new vibranium alloy formula? The vibration that causes vibranium to lose its energy activity doesn't have a good effect on this. Silver Shadow Man sighed and said, "Captain, I always thought that you only have a normal vibranium shield in your hand. That's why I've always looked down on it. Now it seems that I was wrong. The vibranium shield in your hand is made with a brand new alloy formula." "How interesting." He opened his right hand and grabbed the round shield. Then he opened his left hand and delivered a powerful shockwave. Captain America could not withstand this powerful force at all. He was thrown high into the air and several hundred meters away. He looked like a helpless rag doll. Silver Shadow Man carefully hung the round shield on his back and carried it on his back. A brand new alloy formula. You actually used it as a shield. Chapter 1056. In the Wakanda National Research Center inside the mine, Princess Surue was providing remote resources to T'Challa on the battlefield. The supercomputer scanned the structure of the silver shadowy vibranium golem and conducted simulations and analysis. On the other side of the battlefield, Captain America was knocked to the ground. This sort of injury would not have much of an effect on Steve, who was used to going through life and death situations. But Silver Shadow Man's attack contained an incredibly tricky concussive force. Captain America felt as if his skull was trembling violently like a laundry bucket. The cerebellum, which was contained in his skull, was rapidly shaking and crashing against each other, like a bucket of clothes that was being flung dry. Steve tried a few times, but he could not get up. At that moment, the Black Panther, which followed closely behind Steve, flicked its claws. Silver Shadowy Man did not block it. He allowed the 10 vibranium claws to hang on both sides of his head. He lifted his leg and kicked the Black Panther away. Holding his stomach, he fell to his knees. T'Challa slid a long way and stopped beside Captain America. The sharp vibranium claws only left 5 purple marks on the sides of Silver Shadowy Golem's head. The purple energy patterns that represented the vibranium's internal energy disappeared into the depths of the vibranium golem's body, bit by bit, to replenish its energy. Then, the marks disappeared without a trace. Silver Shadowy Man was not hurt at all. Floating in midair, Strange finally formed a formation. He pulled out an energy whip that was formed by the condensation of magical energy in his right hand. He flung the whip in the air, and the energy whip, which sparkled with sparks from spells, trembled violently. The body of the whip, which seemed to be materialized from energy, turned into a ray of light like a bolt of lightning and shot straight at Silver Shadowy Man's chest. The magical energy pierced through the air and let out a noise that sounded like countless sharp cries of birds. Silver Shadowy Man finally became serious. He stretched out a hand, and his arm trembled violently, as if it had turned into countless shadows of hands. It sealed off the space in front of Silver Shadowy Man's chest like an open screen. In the blink of an eye, he reached out and grabbed Strange's energy whip. Transparent ripples appeared all over Silver Shadowy Man's body. These ripple-like phenomena, which were formed by the powerful vibrations that distorted the air, rose from all parts of the vibranium golem's body. Wave after wave, they gathered towards the hand that grabbed Strange's magical weapon. Strange immediately felt that something was wrong, and he prepared to disperse the energy whip with a thought. However, it was too late. As the vibranium metal puppet grabbed the weaved hand and swung it forward, the powerful shockwave collided with the gravitational force, triggering a tsunami-like gravitational wave. The terrifying shockwave suddenly condensed on the fist, causing the space in front of the punch to ripple. Holding back his fear, Strange opened the eye of Agamotto in front of his chest. Instantly, everything around him froze. Time had stopped. Strange wandered in the frozen time. He wanted to avoid the fatal blow, but after taking a step to the side, he realized in despair that in the time halt, the spatial curvature changed by the gravitational wave did not change. With the spatial coordinates he was at as the center, the space around him was greatly warped. The gravitational wave bent the space several kilometers away to Strange's side within a short step. If Strange wanted to use the time halt to leave, then the distance of one step was equivalent to 9 kilometers, and the ratio gradually increased as he got closer to the vibranium golem, the source of the wave. Due to the theory of relativity, Strange's movements in the time halt could not exceed the speed of light. In other words, Strange's movements in the time halt were actually calculated using the speed of light as a frame of reference. The relative speed in the time halt could not exceed the speed of light. This was not a flaw in an ordinary battle. Even if the vibranium golem distorted the spatial curvature, the distance between Strange and the silver shadowy man would not exceed 10,000 kilometers. For the speed of light, this was only an obstacle of 33 milliseconds. Only when the power of the Buddha's palm, the unique and righteous in the battle between Adam and Sargeras, could create a terrifying spatial curvature of 100,000 light years on the surface of Sargeras' body with a step, could the power of the gem of time be reduced to an idiot. In the time halt, Strange approached Sargeras at the speed of light, but that step would take him 10 years. That would create an incomparably ridiculous scene. Although Strange was in the time halt in Sargeras' eyes, he was approaching at the speed of a tortoise, and Sargeras could easily slap him to death with one hand. Who was the one in the time halt? Right now, Strange didn't have that much trouble facing the vibranium golem, but it was still very uncomfortable. Strange only covered 8 kilometers after running for a few minutes, moving one step to the side to avoid the direct impact of the gravitational wave. He had no choice but to shut off the eye of Agamotto. It wasn't that he didn't want to run a little further, or simply run to the vibranium golem to find a way to interrupt its attack, but his magic power could no longer support the consumption of the gem of time. Moreover, Strange felt that in the time halt, some things were whispering and looking at him greedily. Some things that were outside of time and rejected by this universe were watching him. These things couldn't come into contact with any life or matter within the time of this universe. But now Strange felt that this aspect of the universe's protection seemed to be weakening. Some invisible hands were pulling him, making him feel a little heavier. This was a very bad sign, so the barrier between him and these things was weakening. Only then did he remember Chinong warning, for the life within, time was a kind of restraint, but also a kind of protection. Strange steeled his heart and shut off the eye of Agamotto. Then, at a speed that he couldn't react to, he was knocked out. This impact felt like he was a human drawn on a piece of white paper and then being kneaded into a ball by an invisible giant hand. It was a kind of complete distortion and destruction. It didn't destroy his integrity, but it completely subverted his existence. It was a wonderful feeling. Steve and the Black Panther, one barely standing, and the other half kneeling, looked at Strange, who was lying on the ground. Where the vibranium golem's punch had hit, the two Wakanda warriors had brushed past a bit of the gravitational wave and were now smeared on the ground. And in the mirror dimension, countless cracks had appeared on the seemingly frosted, glass-like spatial barrier. It must be known that this seemingly solid, glass-like barrier was essentially space. That was the destruction of the spatial structure. Strange was a little desperate. He lay paralyzed on the ground and muttered, "Unless the weakness in its structure is found, there's no way to fight this battle." Princess Su Rue frantically manipulated the structure of the vibranium golem. She sobbed, "I'm calculating." At this time, only the resurrected corpse controlled by Chenong was left holding a spear horizontally in front of the vibranium golem. He said calmly, "The most prominent characteristic of vibranium is vibration. The strength of this metal lies in its strange physical properties in response to vibration. The frequency of its own vibration makes it ever-changing. Vibration makes it invincible. Vibration makes it indestructible. It can perfectly conduct vibration and is the best carrier of mechanical force. It can also feel the smallest and most powerful vibration of the universe. It is the perfect carrier of all waves and almost perfect substance. But vibration is its strongest aspect, but also its weakest aspect. Chen Ong pointed his spear at the vibranium puppet and said, "The reason it is so powerful now is because the vibranium that makes up its body has reached a perfect state under the regulation of the complex vibration model inside. It is because the vibration waves in its body are complete and harmonious. But as long as this harmony is destroyed, the vibranium will be destroyed. It will be unable to withstand a single blow." Surue suddenly said, I know. I will now bring in a new formula and calculate a new mechanical model. Give me some time. I will soon be able to calculate a way to destroy this harmonious resonance. Chenong sighed and said, There's no time. The vibranium golem laughed with the sound of metal rubbing against each other. Interesting. Someone finally saw through the secret of this body. You have a bright future. How about working with me? If you and them protect Wakanda, will Wakanda's wealth be given to you? But as long as you rely on me, I am willing to share everything, including the endless vibranium in the mine. Chenong was silent. The golem then tempted, Don't worry, I am a person who keeps his promises and is willing to share. Let me think. Stark and those in the same profession can prove it for me. It is too wasteful to let the people of Wakanda take possession of these vibranium. For some reasons, I must use them to conduct some experiments on vibration and vibranium properties. As long as you can contribute your wisdom to this, I will not be stingy with anything. Chin On gently touched the ground with the tip of the spear and gently vibrated the spear. He felt the metal properties of the vibranium spear in his hand constantly changing with the vibration frequency. When the golem finished conveying Ulysses Crow's words, he raised his head and said lightly, Are you done? Ulysses Crow suddenly stopped talking and was silent for a while before sighing, You made a wrong choice. But it doesn't matter. Everyone has a chance to start again, as long as you pay the price. The vibranium golem shook its body and quickly turned into a stream of light. Shooting towards Chenong controlled the black sorcerer's body and shook the spear. The spear trembled violently and shook out thousands of silver flowers. Chun'ang's body did not move, but the spear in his hand turned into a pear blossom. An indistinct shadow of the spear covered the front of Chun'ang's body like silver light, making countless clear clanging sounds with the silver light formed by the vibranium golem. The melodious clanging of metal colliding formed a dense melody. Strange's fingers unconsciously flicked a few times. He looked up in surprise and said, Lisi's special, Will-o'-the-Wisp. Steve and Turkara, the two muscular barbarians, struggled to move their muscles, trying to recover their fighting ability. Hearing this, they looked up in horror. Chunong was wrapped in a ball of silver light, like he was taking a stroll in a park. When they listened carefully, it really did form a rather beautiful melody. It was Lisi's special 6x speed Will-o'-the-Wisp. The two were simply unable to describe this discovery. Was it so cool? Meanwhile, Princess Surue, who was nervously calculating the puppet's vibration model's weakness, instantly understood the opportunity that Chenong had created for her. Chenong is using the sound waves produced by the collision to test the vibranium golem's internal vibration frequency. This is equivalent to providing her with data at all times. Just as Chenong was desperately holding on, in the eyes of others, his life was hanging by a thread. The frequency analysis was hanging by a thread and could succeed at any time. Surue felt someone walking behind her, but she had no time to care. Anyway, those who could come here were the most important members of the Wakanda royal family. She hurriedly took a little time to look up and saw a dark-skinned girl standing behind her. She said in surprise, Nadia, why are you here? Surue complained, Did my brother secretly give you permission again? The future queen's sister-in-law? Black Panther heard the name on the communicator and instantly became nervous. Nadia? Why is she here? Behind Nadia, a figure with gray skin and no nose slowly walked out. The figure was thin and slender, and did not look like a human from Earth at all. That figure stretched out an ordinary index finger and drew it across the back of the busy Su Rue's neck. Su Rue's body instantly froze. She looked in horror at the figure on the screen. Su Rue's breathing became very soft. This strange silence caused Turkara to feel uneasy. He pressed on the Chima Yuju and asked loudly, Su Rue? Su Rue? What happened on your side? Is the communication cut off? On the other side of the Chima Yuju, there was only time for a scream. Crow, who was far away in Kenya, heard Black Panther's nervous voice coming from the puppet he was controlling and smiled in satisfaction. He happily danced a little, cha-cha, while saying to an Asian man wearing a jacket with arrow sleeves, "They've succeeded over there!" Crow smiled proudly, revealing his rotten teeth. Now, Wakanda has fallen into our hands. Chapter 1057. Su Rue. Turkara called out anxiously, Su Rue, what happened on your side? It was quiet on Chimoyoju's side. Only the rustling of people moving could be heard. After a long while, someone walked up to Chimoyoju and said to him in a strange accent, Your sister doesn't seem to be doing well. Kitty. The voice, with a hint of calmness and rigidity, said, Rejoice! Your lowly bodies can be worshipped in front of the King of the Galaxy, the Titan God, the great Thanatos. Be grateful. Your meaningless lives will be sacrificed for his great cause. You will die in the hands of the son of Thanos. This will be the glory of your life and the only meaning of your lowly lives. Your life and everything you have, including this country and its ant-like citizens, all will be sacrificed to the great cause of the Titan God. Now, take up your weapon. Come before me. Kneel and pray for my mercy. Who are you? Turkara gritted his teeth and squeezed out a few words filled with murderous intent. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want either. But if you let my sister and my lover come to harm, if you dare to invade the people of Wakanda, I swear in the name of the Black Panther that I will take revenge until I turn you and your master into ashes. Kill them all. The Black Panther almost roared out his oath in the end. The voice on the other side was reserved. I'm looking forward to it. Kitty, a furry and harmless little animal, like you does look a little fierce when you raise your claws. Strange exclaimed in realization. Ebony throat. The voice on the other end of the call chuckled and hung up. Almost as soon as Chima Yuju was hung up, Chara turned around and pounced at Strange, grabbing the collar of his cloak and yanking him up. You know who he is? You know him? Or did you bring him here? Captain America hurriedly went up to stop the Black Panther's more outrageous behavior, but Black Leopard kicked him away and shouted, You pretended to be the United Nations Commissioner and sneaked into my country. I've already shown the greatest mercy by not treating you as enemies. Right now, my sister and lover are being held hostage, and my country might be invaded. Don't test my patience. Strange turned his right hand and activated the Eye of Agamotto. Then, at the moment when time stopped, he unhesitatingly pulled Black Panther from his collar, grabbed his head, and punched the face that had yet to fully evolve. Then, another punch and a third punch. Although Wizards of Strange's faction were spellcasters in name, one could tell from the way they trained their spells and how they fought. Can you believe that these mages actually have to practice their fists and feet while practicing magic? Therefore, Strange had trained a good fist technique and was proficient in ancient Chinese martial arts, Indian yoga, and Japanese karate. His fists were solid and his kung fu was solid. It smashed into the Black Panther's face, one fist 9 shadows. The rhythm of the Wing Chun set was fast and fierce, and in just 7 seconds, he had smashed more than 40 heavy punches. Black Leopard would definitely regret taking off his mask to make it easier for him to answer the phone. Strange estimated the time when he entered the time stop. In order to prevent himself from being dragged into the void by those existences outside of time, he stopped time for 10 seconds and lifted the time stop. Steve only saw a blur before Strange broke free from the Black Panther's hand and stood to the side. Then there was a loud sound mixed with the sound of flesh hitting flesh, and then his whole body was sent flying and smashed not far away. The Black Panther's feeling was even simpler. There was a sharp pain on his face, and then his vision went black. He was stunned. Steve looked back and saw that the Black Panther's face was swollen at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was chubby and looked a little cute. This was the round, fluffy face of a feline, not the protruding jaw of a chimpanzee. The Black Panther remained in a state of confusion. The pain on his face made it almost impossible for him to think. When he came back to his senses, he was so angry that he wanted to kill Strange. Steve had no choice but to stand between the two of them and say, "Calm down." The Black Panther roared, "Captain, you'd better get out of the way, or I'll beat you too." Strange waved his hand and said, "Come on. I can beat you like I did just now all afternoon, and my hand won't hurt." The Black Panther put on his mask. "You'd better have the same courage now." Strange opened the eye of Agamotto and prepared to turn back time on the Black Panther, and then use the time loop to beat him all afternoon without taking a break. "Are you sure you want to fight among yourselves at this time?" The few of them looked over at the sound and saw that the black man under Chun Ang's control had stopped fighting with the vibranium puppet at some point and was standing to the side, looking at them. Chin Ong turned to the vibranium puppet and said, "My underling acted on his own. I've made a fool of myself." The vibranium puppet chuckled and said, "I actually quite like watching these things. It's so funny to see that Black Panther get beaten up so many times in the face. And thank you for stopping in time. I had time to take a picture of the scene just now. I'm going to remember this joke until next year. You don't know how boring it is to be in seclusion. I'm counting on this to live." The three of them who had been filmed did not know what kind of expressions they would have, looking at the Black Panther, who was suppressing his anger and a little irrational. Chinong could not help but sigh and explain, "It wasn't us who brought Ebony Throat. It was Ebony Throat who brought us." Last month, there was a vicious incident of summoning an alien creature in New York, the kin of the old gods, which attracted the Sorcerer Supreme, the one who just beat you. He investigated with me, and at the same time, the god of thunder Thor also descended from the sky, and he brought us bad news. A few months ago, Thanos' subordinate, one of the 5 Obsidian generals, the son of Thanos, Ebony Throat, known as the Black-Tongued Counselor, avoided all surveillance and secretly infiltrated Earth with the help of Thanos' allies on Earth. The god of thunder asked us to investigate this matter, especially the purpose of Ebony Throat's infiltration into Earth. So a few weeks ago, we found the wizard who summoned Ebony Throat in Cairo. After learning from him that Ebony Throat had been summoned, we have been very interested in a place. Following the traces he left behind, we asked SHIELD to handle the documents for us and came to Wakanda to investigate. This is why we are here." Chin Ong said, "We are not enemies. On the contrary, we have the same enemy. Even if it is difficult to work together, we should not be enemies with each other. Even if what you said is true." The Black Panther struggled. "You can't be sure that you are pretending to be United Nations commissioners without malice." "We are not pretending to be United Nations commissioners." Chun Ong explained, "The 3 United Nations commissioners, Strange, the one who beat you, is the Sorcerer Supreme, representing Kamartaj, who protects Earth. The United States behind Steve, you should know that he is almost a symbol of the United States. And the United Nations Commissioner from China represents China, and even the ICLEI. So we are the United Nations. The King of Wakanda, a small and poor country in Africa, was speechless in the face of the overbearing logic of several hooligans." Chuanong coughed twice, skipped this sensitive topic, and went back to the main topic. The The problem now is, without technical support, the coordination resonance model of the metal vibranium puppet. How do we defeat it? Strange turned his head and sighed. So are you going to brainstorm in front of it? He pointed to the metal vibranium puppet. I can wait. Crow controlled the puppet and said, now that everything has been done, I am really not in a hurry. Chuanong asked, your attack this time was to distract the attention of Wakanda, allowing Ebony Throat to take the opportunity to control the royal family and important people of Wakanda. Ebony Throat has the ability to persuade and even control others with words, which is the origin of his title of Black-Tongued Counselor. He manipulates and plays with the minds and spirits of others, which is the ability you lack to control Wakanda. So, you have joined forces with Ebony Throat? Not at all. The metal vibranium puppet shook its head, its face vividly showing Crow's somewhat neurotic expression. He came to me on his own. I know he must have some ulterior motives, but I still agreed to help him. Why? Black Panther raised his head and asked with a suppressed roar. Because I have confidence. Crow laughed loudly. I have confidence that I can easily kill him after I find out he is up to no good, so he does not dare to betray me. The moment I saw it, I knew that it is a cowardly person. It is the easiest to submit to power, as long as he does not have the confidence to kill me in one blow. Then on Earth, I am its master. The puppet suddenly took 2 steps back, looked at them and said, No, 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 it would be a waste to kill you now. I want to watch a good show. He laughed and said to Black Panther, if you want to save your controlled family and people, then come to Bonanzana to find me. I want to play a game with you. It is too boring to seize Wakanda so easily. I will wait for you in your palace in Bonanzana. After saying that, the puppet split the barrier of the mirror dimension with a punch, soared into the sky, and flew toward the capital of Wakanda, Bonanzana. Black Panther could only roar at the puppet's back in despair, grief, and indignation. At this moment, Ulysses Crow, who was far away in Kenya, was so happy that he wanted to have a high court. He laughed and soared into the sky under the respectful gazes of countless mercenaries. He said to these scum that he had coerced and lured to control, Get ready to go! Wakanda is mine now. One of the mercenary captains asked cautiously, Sir, Wakanda is one of the poorest countries in Africa. Why don't we control Egypt? Ulysses waved his hand, and he was pulled by an invisible wave, so tight that he could not breathe. Ulysses laughed and said, I invited you here to ask me why. I only need one answer. Yes, sir. He let go of the suffocating mercenary and threw him down. He laughed hysterically and said, I have long wanted to do this. Chapter 1058. The border tribe was devastated after the war. Black Leopard walked among the ruins and looked at the civilians of the border tribe who were crying in front of the bodies of their loved ones. He heard the painful moans and wails of the wounded. His eyes were filled with tears and inexplicable grief. After comforting the living and remembering the dead, he stood up and played an inspiring role. Black Leopard had no choice but to endure the great pain and visit his general, Wakabi. This stubborn chief of the border tribe had a broken hand and was undergoing replantation surgery at Chuanong's place. Black Leopard asked Chuanong worriedly, How is his hand? Not very good. Chuanong said, The broken bone has pierced into the brachial plexus, and the bone is completely broken. He needs better medical conditions, but we can't provide them here. Either we prepare to send him to New York or Shanghai, where there are better medical facilities, or... Chuanong raised his head and said, Wakanda also has a very advanced medical system. This can be seen from the emergency treatment equipment here. But these equipment can only simply suppress the wound from worsening and can't really cure it. Black Leopard said with a headache, The medical facilities here are only for emergency treatment. Usually we will transfer the patient to Bonanzana, where there is the most complete and advanced medical system in Wakanda. But now, you better make a decision soon. Chuanong said lightly, The seriously injured can't hold on for long." Black Leopard heard this and walked into the ward. He sat down in front of Wakabee's bed and looked at the unconscious general on the bed. He covered his head with his hands and clutched his scalp tightly. His hands were trembling slightly. At this moment, someone placed a hand on his. Black Leopard looked up in shock and saw Wakabee smiling weakly at him with a pale face. Wakabee. Black Leopard didn't know what to say. He had just suffered a painful defeat and had no face to face his loyal general. Wakabee raised his hand weakly to stop him and said, "You don't have to feel guilty about this, Your Majesty. Guarding the border of Wakanda is the tribe's mission. Everyone here knows that we will be the first to face the enemy's invasion, and we also know the price. I can say that everyone in the tribe, including the elderly and the children, are prepared to pay the price." Wakabee, the panther, said painfully, "There's a problem with Bonanzana. The enemy only attacked this place to lure the tiger away from the mountain. But the king's guards should still be here." Wakabee exclaimed, "They are the strongest army in Wakanda. I still don't know the specific situation in Bonanzana, but Princess Surue and Mother could have fallen into the hands of the enemy. I don't know how many forces loyal to the royal family are left in Bonanzana, so I want to bring people to take a look and prepare to rescue the royal family. Moreover, the wounded here also needed Bonanzana's medical facilities. You also need Your Majesty." Wakabee said, "Now you should summon the tribes that are loyal to you. Although the royal tribe might fall, you still have the loyalty of the rivers, mines, and border tribes." "I'm running out of time." Turkala said, "Sincerely, the enemy is only holding the royal family hostage through mind control. I hope to carry out a decapitation operation and kill the enemy who is holding the royal family hostage through mind control, freeing Bonanzana from this crisis. We cannot give the enemy more time to plan. They are also short of time now." "Your Majesty." Wakabee looked at Turkala and said solemnly, "Please allow me to work for Your Majesty and lead the border tribes to temporarily attack Bonanzana." "But your arm." Turkala tried to dissuade him. Wakabee reached out and pulled out the dagger beside him. Without hesitation, he raised the blade and cut off his injured arm. He groaned in pain, his forehead covered in sweat. Turkala was shocked by his determination and couldn't stop him in time. He could only call out loudly, "Doctor! Doctor!" Chinong heard the call and rushed in. Seeing Wakabee's severed arm staining the hospital bed, he hurriedly went up to stop the bleeding. At the same time, he asked in bewilderment, "His arm can still be saved. Why are you so anxious?" Wakabee endured the pain and asked Chinong, "How much longer do I need to stand up and fight?" Chinong looked at his pale face and sighed. "I'll give you a blood transfusion. You'll need about a week to regain the ability to move. But there are other ways. You know that vibranium is a very magical metal. It can even be used as a stimulant. I can ionize some vibranium and inject it into your bloodstream. Then use its self-healing ability to heal your wound. If the conditions are right, I can even make you grow a vibranium arm. But the conditions are too simple now. Ionizing vibranium may cause your internal organs to be poisoned by the metal. This is a last resort. Even if you survive in the future, there will be repercussions. Dying on the battlefield is a warrior's fate." Wakabee said, "So is dying from wounds. Rather than dragging my injured body and watching my king fight for Wakanda alone, I would rather give up everything to fight for him." Chinong sighed helplessly. "I'll go prepare for the surgery." After the combined surgery by Chinong and Strange, Wakabee recovered well. His blood had a faint silver tinge. Chinong used vibrations to activate the liquid vibranium in his body, healing the wound on his broken arm quickly. He had regained his combat ability, and because of the liquid vibranium in his body, his strength was even stronger than before. After dawn, Wakabee and T'Challa went to gather the warriors of the tribes at the border, while Strange and Chinong found Steve. At this time, Steve was packing up. He He was wearing Captain America's uniform and carrying the vibranium shield on his back. Seeing that Chen-Ong and Strange had arrived, he smiled helplessly. I contacted SHIELD yesterday, but they can't provide support for the time being. Strange glanced at his luggage and asked knowingly, so Captain America put on his backpack and answered, so I'll go with you. I won't stand idly by when a peaceful and prosperous country is invaded. Strange opened his arms and hugged him, patting Steve's back firmly. Welcome, Captain. Chen-Ong laughed and said to the two, we're going to take the King's Wakanda Royale spaceship to Bonanzana. T'Challa tried to contact Bonanzana, but we've lost contact with them, so we'll be leaving soon. The good news is that T'Challa has contacted the river and mine tribes. Only the Jabba tribe is uncontactable. Both tribes will send reinforcements to Bonanzana, but because of the urgency of the situation, there won't be many reinforcements. And the royal tribe's strength is the sum of the other 4 tribes. They control the lifeline of Wakanda, vibranium and technology. Chapter 1059. Before going to Bonanzana, Chen-Ong, Strange, and Steve had a final exchange of opinions. Chen-Ong said solemnly, the current situation has reached the worst point. No matter how we look at it, the 3 of us cannot allow vibranium resources to fall into the hands of criminals who collude with extraterrestrial forces. The sovereignty of Wakanda needs the protection of both of us. Captain Steve, the United States needs to send people to protect Wakanda's democracy and sovereignty and thwart the interference of dictators, international criminal organizations, and extraterrestrial forces. The sovereignty of Wakanda and vibranium, a precious resource that belongs to all mankind, are protected by the United States. Steve said, I have already informed SHIELD to immediately send reinforcements, but SHIELD's strength is limited, and we cannot let the Department of Defense intervene. Because the Department of Defense lacks global awareness. Chen-Ong nodded in understanding. Strange looked up and asked, what is the opinion of the Revolutionary Alliance? The Revolutionary Alliance respects Wakanda's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and is vigilant against possible humanitarian disasters and extraterrestrial invasion in Wakanda. Once Wakanda's regime falls into the hands of hostile extraterrestrial forces, the Revolutionary Alliance will provide armed support. But before that, we should avoid this result through more flexible means. Because the Revolutionary Alliance hopes to minimize direct interference with the political entities on Earth. Strange said, Ebony Throat's sudden surrender to Crow caught us off guard. Originally, Crow did not have the ability to control Wakanda at all, but now with the help of Ebony Throat's mind control and collective suggestion, there's a possibility of it happening. The only reason Ebony Throat appeared in Wakanda is vibranium. Vibranium is one of the most precious resources in the universe. If it falls into the hands of Thanos, it will be enough for him to build a deadly army, break through the Revolutionary Alliance's defense line, and burn the flames of war on Earth. The survival of 7 billion humans is at stake. Thanos obviously has the ability to use this resource. So, Chen-Ong concluded, stopping Crow from usurping Wakanda is the common wish of our side and the United States. The Liberators are mainly responsible for the defense of extraterrestrials, and I have no right to use the Dimensional Warriors. My influence is limited to the diplomatic authority given to me by the Revolutionary Alliance, so it will be difficult for us to get the resources of the Revolutionary Alliance in a short period of time. But after the Crow usurped the throne, I could provide a report of my investigation, and the Revolutionary League would intervene directly. This is our backup measure. With our current strength, we need more support from SHIELD, Chen-Ong explained. Strange said, I have sent a message to the Asgardians. They will provide some support, but they can only deal with Ebony Throat. The internal affairs of the Earthlings are very sensitive. Crow and his lackeys need to be dealt with by ourselves. Steve continued, SHIELD's reinforcements will arrive soon, but the time given by Tekala is too tight, so they can only arrive later. I have urgently submitted the data provided by investigator Chen to SHIES supercomputer for processing, and now the data is out. Chen Ong nodded and said, "Then we have hope in dealing with the vibranium puppets." Crow obviously can't control Wakanda. He doesn't have the manpower and material resources to completely seize control of a country. Moreover, he is a white man. His race and skin color make him completely unacceptable to the people of Wakanda. So if the Black Panther wants to take back Bonanzana, the only obstacle he has to face is Crow, his men, and his allies. He chose to end the battle quickly, so it can't be said to be a wrong choice. Strange explained on behalf of Tekala. So Crow must still have other plans. Chun Ong concluded, the strength in his hands is not enough to directly control Wakanda, but he has a talent like Ebony Throat, who is proficient in mental suggestion and mind control. So, it is very likely that he will choose to support the puppet of the royal family in Wakanda to influence the key figures in Wakanda. He will package his conspiracy as an internal seizure of power by the Wakanda royal tribe to avoid large-scale resistance by the people of Wakanda. And Wakanda's backward social system and feudal monarchy have given him an opportunity. Captain Steve, it is recorded in the files of the Human Revolutionary Alliance that you have worked closely with a terrifying mind and mind expert, an ability user codenamed Professor X. Can you ask him to interfere? We can't influence him. Steve said frankly, Professor left Earth after the Atom incident and went to the universe to prepare to face the apocalypse cataclysm in the future. Not to mention that we can't contact him now, even if we do. It's too late. So we can only fight with our backs to the wall. Chun Ong said with emotion, Crow is just a small problem. If he is the only one who makes a move against Wakanda, we don't need to deal with it so nervously. Some countries may even be happy to see. Chun Ong said and looked at Captain America. After all, if the true situation of Wakanda's vibranium resources is known to those countries, it will definitely cause them to drool. They may be happy to see internal strife in Wakanda. After all, if there is no strife, they can't intervene. Crow is obviously aware of this, but he can't leave Ebony Throat now. So I conclude that once the situation is settled and Crow's forces have initially stabilized, he will definitely betray Ebony Throat shamelessly. And those countries will immediately jump in and collude with Crow, betting on both sides, and taking the opportunity to plunder vibranium. At that time, they will stop the Human Revolutionary Alliance from interfering with Wakanda, because the Human Revolutionary Alliance can no longer intervene on the grounds of the danger of alien forces. This has become a civil war among the forces on Earth. There will inevitably be many countries who want to use this war to pry open the closed shell of Wakanda, just like they did in the last century, the century before that, and this century, fanning the flames and sharing the benefits. Steve was silent and speechless. Chun Ong continued, This is the truth of SHIELD's inability to support. To put it nicely, SHIELD is constrained by internal interest groups. To put it bluntly, that black-skinned one-eyed man is waiting for that moment, waiting for Crow to surrender to him. Captain, the interests of SHIELD may be contrary to the Human Revolutionary Alliance, but our interests are the same. We all want to protect the current government of Wakanda and the king that the people of Wakanda themselves support. We want to prevent this peaceful place from falling into a cruel civil war and becoming an economic colony of the world's developed countries and a place to plunder resources. So we need to unite. Chun Ong said, to save Wakanda. I can promise this on behalf of the Human Revolutionary Alliance. Any position of the Human Revolutionary Alliance is based on the basic humanitarianism and democratic choice of the people of Wakanda. It is based on maintaining the political stability of Wakanda and avoiding civil war and external aggression. But the United States can't promise these. You are so schizophrenic. Only you, Captain America, and the SHIELD and the Avengers you represent, who are more humanitarian inclined, may stand on our side. What about Kamartaj Strange? Chinong asked. Strange pondered for a moment and said, Strange is not politically aligned, but out of humanitarianism and universal values, I will agree with your position if you are not deceiving us. The Human Revolutionary Alliance is already facing the sea of stars, and we have no need for Earth's resources, even vibranium. Chinong continued, Externally, Asgard supports us. Last night, I exchanged views with Thor remotely. His opinion is that we can't wait for Crow to reach a compromise with us, because Ebony Throat also knows that Crow will definitely betray him. But he has already chosen to use Crow, which means that he is confident that he can complete Thanos' entrustment or is carrying out some conspiracy. We can't give him a chance. We can't indulge this terrorist. Then, Chun-Ong said, This sniper operation will be directly intervened by the three of us. Our only reinforcements are the Asgardians, and they will not attack the local criminals on Earth. They may or may not come SHIELD in Schrödinger mode. I say this to remind everyone that we seem to have the support of the forces behind us, but in fact we are tied up. We need more direct support. Our own strength. Steve thought for a long time. I will inform the heroes I can influence and do my best. There should be people who will support me. Chapter 1060. Bonanzana was a hidden city in the mountains. Towering buildings and sci-fi colored light screens and tracks, as well as bustling residents dressed in traditional African clothing, decorated this somewhat fantastical city. Today it was exceptionally noisy and quiet. The noise came from the faint turmoil and noise coming from the city's major locations. The silence came from the collective silence of the city's rulers. The subjects of the royal tribe were a little uneasy, but Wakanda had been peaceful for too long. They had unparalleled confidence in the royal family and firmly believed that their king would keep all wars and conflicts out of Wakanda's borders. But the heart of the city, the core area represented by the palace, had completely fallen. The royal guards were nowhere to be seen, but there were some rude and unreasonable mercenaries standing guard on the main roads of the palace. These mercenaries were in high spirits as they stood guard, talking to each other about some vulgar topics to maintain the excitement of plundering in their hearts. There were also some mercenaries who were not at their posts, collecting the luxurious decorations of the palace, or doing unspeakable evil things to some of the palace's maids. The sacred place of Wakanda's royal authority had become a hell. Princess Su-Rue, on the other hand, did not suffer any harm, but she was still stationed at Wakanda's National Technological Command Center, remotely controlling the entire city's surveillance system through Chimayuju. Some other mercenaries, under the leadership of their leader, Moses Magnum, were eliminating the group of people who were loyal to Turkala and felt that something was wrong with the royal family. Princess Su-Rue suddenly turned to Ebony Throat and said, Someone is approaching the camouflage barrier. It's the king's personal spaceship. I can't remove its authority for now. Ebony Throat and Crow looked at each other, and Crow said excitedly, He's finally here. Ebony Throat ordered, Show me his location. Princess Su-Rue obediently turned on the projection. Silver-dotted lines outlined the entire city's terrain and defense system, and T'Challa's spaceship was shown in gold, approaching Bonanzana. T'Challa's spaceship slowly opened the camouflage barrier, and a city that no one could have imagined came into view. Steve looked at the bustling city outside the window, standing tall on the vast African continent. The high-tech facilities and the bustling black people complemented each other. This strong contrast with the poverty and backwardness he had experienced since he entered Africa left him momentarily dazed. Strange also exclaimed, How shocking! At the Black Panther's side, General Wakabi said doubtfully, Your Majesty, is it necessary to let the people of the United Nations see the true side of Wakanda? We can't hide for long. T'Challa sighed, We still have to face this day. This is Wakanda's challenge, but it is also its opportunity. Of course, we will run into those who have designs on Wakanda's rich resources. But at the same time, we can also develop our influence and make true friends. As the spaceship slowly approached the docking point in the palace, Black Panther also saw the nervous mercenaries in front of the palace, armed with vibranium weapons. He clenched his fists tightly, his expression a little fierce. He knew that he had to prepare for the worst. Captain America put on her shield, and Strange slowly opened the suspended ring portal. The mercenaries were armed with vibranium weapons. They were still not used to the vibranium spears that could fire energy beams and attack at close range. Facing the slowly descending spaceship, everyone looked nervously at the exit of the spaceship. With a soft sound, the door of the spaceship slowly opened, revealing 4 figures standing behind the door. Just as the mercenaries were fully focused and ready to attack, a portal flickering with golden embers opened above their heads behind them, and dozens of Wakanda warriors rushed out from it. These battle-hardened warriors roared and rushed toward the enemy, using the vibranium daggers in their hands to stab into the mercenaries' vitals. The Wakanda warriors bloomed from the center of the mercenaries' formation. Several portals opened in different places, and the Wakanda warriors who rushed out from them instantly killed the enemies in front of them, occupying the entire square. The unexpected attack threw the mercenaries into chaos. Black Panther, Steve, Strange, and the resurrected corpses controlled by Chun-Ong appeared in the opened cabin door. Behind them were several Kamartaj mages who were opening portals. The king followed closely behind Strange, using his cane to kill an enemy who rushed at him. Use the portals to bloom at multiple points. Execute the jumping knife tactic. Chun-Ong operated the computer in the spaceship to hack into Wakanda's electronic defense system. He quickly read the surveillance of Wakanda and fed the information back to the mages' information terminals. One by one, the mages jumped into their own portals. As soon as they came down, they stood in front of the Wakanda warriors. Each mage represented a team of about 5 or 6 people. According to the coordinates given by the surveillance, they opened portals to 7 or 8 places. One by one, the warriors rushed into the portals and quickly killed the enemies they faced. Under Chun-Ang's control, they were always able to face the unsuspecting enemies with superior forces. They were either united or scattered, always acting in small teams. Under Chun-Ang's control, they quickly controlled the situation. Princess Su-Rue, on the other side, fought back nervously. She was sweating profusely. The intruder's electronic warfare ability is very strong. He has seized part of the surveillance authority. Now we're blocking the targeted information. Crow smiled ferociously and turned around. Let's go. Come with me to meet them. Strange stayed next to Chun-Ong and looked at the space surveillance interference equipment and electronic warfare equipment provided by the HPRA. Chun-Ong nodded. The HPRA can't provide help in terms of personnel, but we can help you create an advantage in information. I'm an information warfare expert sent by the HPRA to participate in this battle. I'm your cyber army, providing you with technological suppression. Strange took a deep look at him and said, "Every time I think I understand you, reality always slaps me in the face. The vibranium puppets are here." Chun-Ong suddenly said. 6 red symbols representing vibranium puppets appeared in his surveillance. Strange's expression was solemn. He said in a low voice, "Crow can indeed control more than one vibranium puppet. Originally, it was only the number of vibranium puppets that restricted him. Now that Bonanzana has been taken down, it's no longer a problem for him. If we had come a little later, we might have faced an army of vibranium puppets." Chun-Ong said attentively, "Now, let's see if the data we've calculated and the gravitational wave equipment provided by the HPRA are reliable." Chun-Ong held the handle of the modified spaceship's weapon and looked at the detection data of the vibranium puppets, confirming the vibration model he had calculated bit by bit. However, the 6 puppets rushed out of the roof of the palace and formed a large circle, surrounding the Wakanda warriors who were attacking with the Black Panther. Chun-Ong pulled the handle, and a powerful gravitational wave erupted from the spaceship in all directions. Crow's expression changed. He felt that his control over the vibranium puppets was seriously affected. On the other side, Strange had already brought the correction equipment. The HBRA's spatial anti-interference device and coordinate correction device calculated the specific coordinates of the space that was affected by the gravitational wave. It guided Strange to relocate the coordinates and open the portal. He opened the portal to the HBRA's fortress below the 6 puppets. Then, the HBRA's laboratory on the other side of the portal conducted a gravitational distortion experiment at the portal. The portal to the artificial black hole pulled all the vibranium puppets in at once. Chun-Ong watched as the vibranium puppets disappeared. He turned around and said, "This is as far as the HBRA can go." He pointed to Crow's coordinates and said, "Crow's men are now gathered here, and Ebonium Throat is at the Wakanda National Laboratory. You have to split up. Someone has to break Ebonium Throat's control over the royal family and rescue T, Chara's sister, and mother, according to our plan." Strange stood up and said, "It's my turn now." With a wave of his hand, he shuttled through the portal and came in front of the Black Panther. He looked around and said, "Follow the instructions and clear out the small groups of enemies nearby. At the same time, stop them from going to support. Mages, bring representatives to all parts of Bonanzana and recruit clansmen and warriors loyal to the royal family to support them. Your Majesty, you and the captain will bring people to face Ulysses Crow. I'll go rescue the hostages." After saying that, he opened the portal to Crow's location. The Black Panther rushed in without hesitation. Then, the team that had gathered most of the hero's reinforcements also walked into the portal under the leadership of Captain America. Strange, on the other hand, quickly teleported himself to Ebonium Throat. Chapter 1061. In the spacious hall of the palace, Black Panther, Captain America, and the others walked out of the portal. They met Crow, who was sitting on the throne of Wakanda, and below the throne was a series of supervillains and lackeys that Crow had gathered. Steve pressed down on the micro earpiece in his right ear and sent the video footage of everyone present to Chun-Ong through his contact lens. He requested, "Crow has gathered a group of villains. I need to know their origins and intelligence." Chun-Ong used the authority given by Captain America to connect to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s database and the shared database of the Revolutionary Alliance. That was a shared database of criminal records and key surveillance of dangerous people around the world. It was dedicated to monitoring people with superpowers and potential superpowers in unstable places on Earth. Chun-Ong first marked the entrance in Captain America's contact lens. He led a team of elite mercenaries and killed several Wakandan warriors who were trying to stop him and the mercenary leader, who was rushing to support them. Moses Magnum, Ethiopian. When he was a child, he experienced the invasion of Ethiopia by Italian fascist Mussolini, so he felt the terror and power of advanced weapons. When he grew up, he became an independent arms dealer and has always been on good terms with Crow. According to the data, he is 93 years old this year. Black Panther looked at the muscular and surprisingly strong mercenary leader Moses Magnum and could not help but say, "Are you sure he is 83 years old? He looks like he is only 38. Obviously." Chun-Ong teased, "This is the reason he defected to Crow. This is Crow's former boss. Crow's arms business was supported by him in the early days. And this person also had a business conflict with Stark. His arms business was later withdrawn because of Stark's attack. People who have a grudge against Tani are practically everywhere." Steve teased, "We should let him see. I'm afraid half of the people here are his acquaintances. The scan results show that he has not undergone human modification and does not have any superpowers. But his muscles show that he is good at fighting, and he has a lot of high-tech gadgets on him," Chun-Ong reminded. relying on the high-tech equipment on your body and your own combat ability to fight? Black Panther was eager to make a move. Chun Ong continued to mark the next target. It was a young man from the east who stood to the right of Crow. He held a long sword in his hand and was strangely silent. He introduced, "This is Zheng Shangqi, the #1 wanted person of the Human Revolutionary Alliance. Fu Manzhou, the son of Lord Man. There were originally 2 people, but they have merged into one here, the next weapon grandmaster of the demonic blade 10 Rings. He has been practicing martial arts with his father since young, and is proficient in ancient Chinese martial arts. He possesses the power of the demonic blade. The demonic blade 10 Rings in his hand were reforged by his father, Lord Man. Later, during the Republic of China, Lord Man tried to rule over China with them and destroyed them. When the 10 demonic blade rings are in perfect condition, they each have their own special abilities. When combined, they form a set of supreme martial arts, known as the 10 Heavenly Calamities. He is Lord Man's only disciple and son. So he must have also inherited this set of martial arts that uses the devil blade to create 10 natural phenomena in the natural world, causing the world to change in color. What about the black man with the big smile? Hawkeye, who had rushed over from SHIELD, pointed to the right of Crow. There was a guy with a mouth that took up half of his face and a bright smile. The database shows that his name is Achabi, and he used to be an ordinary African farmer. Later, he was wanted for killing dozens of rebels who invaded his village. At this point, Chanong paused, obviously dissatisfied with the backwardness of the database. He simply explained himself, but I can see that he is a sorcerer from a voodoo sect, and he has an annoying familiar aura. This is a voodoo sorcerer who sold his soul to the devil. His master should be our old friend, Mephitis. Captain America turned back to look at the last person. It was a mysterious person wrapped in black fog, and his entire body reeked of the sweet smell of blood. Before Chinong could speak, Strange jumped out of nowhere and said, "Let me tell you this. He is Kamarta's mortal enemy, a fallen person who defected to the dark dimension, Dormammu. He was a surgeon in London at the end of the 19th century. Later, he committed a murder, killing several innocent women as a blood sacrifice to the dark dimension, and Dormammu made him a monster of the dark dimension. He is the ancestor of the famous serial murderers, Jack the Ripper. We have been tracking him for hundreds of years." Strange said, "It is to make him pay for the blood debt of the past." Seeing that he looked like he wanted to take action personally, Chinong had to remind him, "You have to go deal with Ebony Throat. Before we defeat Crow, we must rescue Chalia's family. Otherwise, I'm afraid he won't be able to rest easy." "Leave him to me," the chubby China Wizard King said, tightening his grip on a staff. Seeing this, Strange was relieved. He nodded and disappeared into the portal, arriving at the Wakandan National Laboratory controlled by Ebony Throat. Seeing Strange appear in front of Ebony Throat through the surveillance, Chinong was relieved and said to Captain America, "You guys find your own opponents. Leave Jack the Ripper to the king." Captain America stood in front of the mercenary leader, Moses Magnum. Hawkeye shrugged. "They all play with cold weapons. This Asian boy seems to be a child. This makes me feel like I'm bullying him." So he stood in front of Zheng Shangqi. The resurrected corpse controlled by Chun Ong hooked its pinky at Achabi, who was also a black wizard. Achabi's smile turned ferocious, and the consciousness of the resurrected corpse revealed a look of horror. The voodoo doll that Chun Ong brought with it said in fear, "He is Achabi. He is the wizard demon Achabi. He is a lunatic who sold his soul to the demon. Why do you know him?" Chun Ong asked it calmly. The voodoo doll's reaction was very crazy. "He is a famous figure in our field. He is a very cruel and crazy guy. You can't let me face him alone. That's not just you. It's my consciousness inside your body." Chin Ong revealed an interesting smile and said in a low voice, "Is he very scary? More scary than me?" The voodoo doll suddenly became quiet. Yes, who could be more scary than the person next to me? Thinking of this, I felt inexplicably a little relieved. Wizard King teleported to the middle of the throne room and faced Jack the Ripper. As the host, Black Panther was released by everyone so that he could freely face his enemy, Ulysses Crow, who killed his father and wanted to enslave his country. Crow sat on the throne and played with the Black Panther mask left behind by the old king. His skin is flowing with a silver metallic luster, and he is enjoying the appearance of the heroes with great interest. He even greeted Captain America and Hawkeye, who had met each other before. "Welcome to Wakanda." Crow, who was sitting on the throne, smiled and said, "Please allow me to do my best as the host and arrange this grand gladiatorial fight." "Crow," Black Panther roared, "get down from my father's throne. That place is not for people like you to defile." Crow stuck out his tongue and licked the throne. "Defile? Is that so? Or do I have to sit here and have sex? Oh, just thinking about it makes me excited. I should have brought my favorite issues of Playboy magazine over. To be honest, your mother is really a beautiful woman. Yo, yo, yo. Don't get excited. I don't mean that I have any thoughts about her. I have already gotten rid of this kind of low-grade interest. Do you know? I can feel the microwave vibration from the depths of the planet's core. I can let this vibration reach my prostate. It feels like I'm F* King Earth. Damn it, I'm F* King Earth. It feels so good." Black Panther could not hold it in anymore. He roared and pounced on Crow, but halfway through, a person wearing the same Black Panther armor pounced on him, smashing into him and throwing him out. Crow sat on the throne, admiring all of this. The guy wearing the same Black Panther mask put away his mask, revealing a face that was somewhat similar to Tekala's. Crow said, "Kitten, you'll never guess who I've found. Look at who this is. Can you guess who he is?" Chapter 1062. The face seemed to guess that he did not know him. He peeled off his lower lip and revealed a line of fluorescent blue code. Crow laughed so hard that he fell over on his throne. Crow choked on his laughter and said, "He is the son of my partner, the royal family of Wakanda. His father is your father's brother, the prince whom your father killed with his own hands, Nijab." Black Panther was shocked. He looked at his young cousin in front of him and noticed the ring around his neck. He recalled the secret the old king had told him in the illusion about the death of his uncle Nijab. He said in a low voice, "Everything my father, the king of Wakanda, T'Chaka did was fair. This was a fair trial because your father betrayed Wakanda." "Shut up!" Eric Kermango or Anai Jadaka roared. He only had a few different opinions about Wakanda, but he still loved this country. "So you brought people to invade it?" Turkala asked. Anai Jadaka replied, "I did it to change it. Wakanda, do you know how powerful Wakanda is? But our people still suffer the most terrible suffering in the world. Our people and race have become the lowest race in the world. You're cowardly protecting yourselves here, but you can only watch as billions of people with the same skin color as a struggle to survive outside this barrier. You watch as the white people commit crimes that are higher than the mountains and deeper than the sea here for centuries. You watch as they commit blood debts, but you do nothing about it. How many lies has Wakanda, who has secluded itself from the outside world, for the sake of so-called peace?" Although Turkala felt the same, he had to protect his father's dignity at this time. He replied, "That is because we are protecting this country." "Protecting?" Anai Jadaka roared. "Only the weak need protection. The strong are only restrained. Outside of Wakanda, people have lost their minds because of greed. Just letting Ulysses Crow, who is behind you, know about this has already brought us so much suffering. If the whole world knows about the wealth and vibranium here, war will break the peace here, and Wakanda will become a hell of war. There will be countless ambitious people eyeing this place. We will never have a day of peace. Vibranium, vibranium, vibranium," And I, Jadaka, slammed his spear on the ground and interrupted Tekera. How much longer are you going to maintain this lie? Vibranium isn't wealth. It's a curse. And I, Jadaka, said. Tekera could not help but clench his fists. He asked nervously, "What did you say?" And I, Jadaka, said proudly, "Don't repeat the lie that has existed for tens of thousands of years. Why did the Jabari tribe betray their king? Why did they reject the Panther goddess? Because they knew the truth. The so-called heart-shaped herb that gave the Black Panther power was just a lie. Lies. It only unlocked the shackles on us and gave us back the power that originally belonged to us. The Black Panther is a lie and the royal family is a lie. Every Wakanda person, no, every black person has this power in their body. It's vibranium that cursed us. It sealed our power." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Tekera said. "There's so many tribes far away from vibranium. Since when did they have the power and wisdom of the Wakanda people? Because there are 5 sources of the curse that sealed them." And I, Jadaka, counted. Matter, soul, death, life, and fate. The 5 oldest tribes guard the 5 seals. Once the seals are unlocked, we can obtain the power and wisdom of our ancestors, and we will rule the world. Jadaka! The Black Panther roared and interrupted him. "Do you want Wakanda to be destroyed?" And I, Jadaka, smiled mysteriously. He turned to look above him. Tekera looked back as well. He saw a camera. And I, Jadaka, said, "Now everyone knows." Tekera's face paled. He shook his head. "No, you don't know. Vibranium is imprisonment, but it's also protection. If you unlock the seal, it means that you've sent a signal to the Creator that you want to be tested. Our ancestors sealed their power because they were afraid of the disaster brought by the Creator's test. You'll only attract them." "Who are they?" And I, Jadaka, roared. "They are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse," Tekera said fearfully. "They created our ancestors, gave them power and wisdom, but cruelly destroyed them, giving them the so-called test. The Messiah and the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse." Steve was stunned. "It's the apocalypse again. Vibranium records the history of our tribe." Tekera said in a low voice, "That meteorite that fell from the sky is part of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Our ancestors discovered that this meteorite recorded everything that happened around it, the birth, growth, destruction, and rebirth of our tribe. That's why I know the horror of that disaster. Originally, only when the king consumed the heart-shaped herb and unlocked the seal could he enter the meteorite to see everything, meet the souls of the kings, and see the Panther goddess. But now I can send out a high-frequency vibration so that the vibranium can reproduce everything it recorded." Tekera said as he sent a message to Chinong. After receiving the message, Chun-Ong adjusted the vibration frequency of the gravitational wave generator on the ship. The distant vibranium mine glowed blue, and the city that Wakanda had created with vibranium resonated with it, turning into a blue sea. Between the blue light, the endless battlefield ruins suddenly appeared beside them. It was as if they had returned to the ancient times. It was a terrifying battlefield. The tall humanoid beings with blurry faces were like gods. Every time they raised their hands, it would be a force that could topple mountains and overturn seas. The people of Wakanda were so frightened that they knelt down in front of their divine might, thinking that they were gods. But in the blink of an eye, their enemies appeared. There were indistinguishable shadows wrapped in intense light, the deepest and darkest shadows, monsters of all shapes and forms, and an unimaginably dark space. The tall, godlike figures collapsed. They died in battle, fled, and left the ruins of their civilization and countless corpses on the ground. Finally, a small group of the remaining tall figures came to Wakanda. They looked at the huge meteorite falling from the sky in surprise. They knelt before the vibranium meteorite and used an ancient language to offer sacrifices around the meteorite. The ancient song of the vast expanse sounded again, echoing beside the meteorite. "Now, Creator, please listen. We have no intention of challenging your authority. Even if we know that we were born because of you, we have sinned against the heavens. But all life in this world is unique. It should not be chosen, and it should not be eliminated. Now, please give us hope. Though we know that there are good and evil, virtuous and foolish, may you have mercy on those who are willing to walk with you and give them hope. As the sun rose again, the meteorite glowed with golden light under the afterglow of the sun. The people of Wakanda had never seen vibranium emit such light. In the light, all the tall figures lost their golden color and degenerated into short black men. They were wild with joy and sang praises around the meteorite naked. Thank the Creator for his forgiveness. Below the meteorite, the leader of the tall figures was a black man. He knelt piously at the foot of the meteorite. A black panther walked slowly towards him and lay down in front of him. Heart-shaped herbs grew on the ground. The black man picked the herbs and drank them in one gulp. The black men around him cheered for him and crowned him king. Some of the black men who resisted the light of the meteorite still had ape-like fur. They did not seem to agree with their leader's behavior. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, they quietly retreated deep into the mountains in the distance. Of course, Tekera was not playing the original version of history. Instead, it was a version that had been edited by the souls of the past Black Panthers of Wakanda to remove the sensitive words, the so-called official history. The exposure of Wakanda's history made the people of the entire city uneasy. The people who had been firm supporters of Tekera began to feel lost. The authority of the royal family had never been so weak. Jadaka had achieved his goal. He had shaken the people's support for Tekera. According to our tribe's tradition, Jadaka pulled out the spear in front of him and walked towards Tekera. The victor is king. This is not a tribe's tradition. Although you have the right to challenge the throne, you must follow the traditional ceremony. The ceremony is over. I am your king. The Black Panther suppressed his anger and said, You sided with the enemy who killed the old king. You are not fit to be king. That's your father, but he's the one who killed my father. Jadaka said, There are no traditional ceremonies. These are just traditions followed by the mediocre. There is only one true tradition. The strongest is king. I will step on your head and make you bow to me. When I prove that I am far more powerful than you, I will naturally be king. Jadaka pointed the tip of his spear at Tekera and said, The battle for the throne! His voice was broadcasted live to Bonanzana on countless screens. In the process, Ebony Throat used his magic to secretly plant a mental suggestion. At this moment, someone in Bonanzana raised his hand and said, The usurper is king! The elders of the river, the mines, and the royal tribe of Bonanzana who had rushed over looked at each other, tacitly agreeing with this sporadic sound. Then a thunderous roar sounded on their way back. The battle for the throne, the victor is king! The Black Panther flicked out his sharp claws and lowered his body. He replied, The victor is king. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. Jadaka roared and charged forward with his spear. The 4 helpers who had come with Laura also pounced on the opposing heroes. Crow laughed loudly on the throne, while Chunong smiled on the spaceship. Ebony Throat raised his index finger and shushed him, cutting off the mental suggestion. Strange figure in a red cloak appeared behind him. Chapter 1063. Jadaka donned the Black Panther armor, which was also made of vibranium. Compared to Turkera's armor, Jadaka's was gold in color, and his mask had obvious patterns of gold coins. According to the tradition of Wakanda's kings being called Black Panther, Jadaka, who had yet to ascend the throne, could be called the Golden Panther. Although the Golden Panther armor was also made by Princess Surue, it had been modified by Crow with superb acoustical technology after Jadaka had stolen it. So when Jadaka wore the armor with gold decorations and gold coins, an air barrier that distorted light like steam appeared around the armor. Before Turkera could react, the spear in Jadaka's hand shot out like lightning. Using the unique properties of vibranium, the spear drew a silver arc in the air without a sound, leaving only an afterimage in the air. The sharp, almost indestructible spearhead headed straight for Turkara's left chest. The Black Panther did not carry any weapons other than the sharp claws that came with the armor. The two of them were about 3 to 4 meters apart, but Jidaka, wrapped in his battle suit, seemed to have transcended this space, penetrated through layers of barriers, and appeared almost unbelievably in front of Turkala. The steam-like air barrier around him rippled like water, and the violently distorted air refracted light, causing the silver light of the spear to refract erratically, deceiving Turkala's eyes. Turkara only had time to cross his arms in front of his chest. Then he felt his hand sink as the spear collided with his arms with a dull thud. Then an unparalleled force surged from the point of contact, and Turkala could not stop his feet. He had to take a few steps back before he could barely manage to hold his ground. Panic rose in Turkara's heart. He did not know how Crow had modified this armor. The Golden Panther armor, which had gone through acoustical modification, was completely silent. It broke through the sound barrier, and even walking on the ground would not make a sound. The speed at which it broke through the sound barrier distorted the air around the armor, causing light to refract. With his vision and hearing deceived, Turkara could not deal with Jidaka's attacks at all. Jidaka's spear skills were astonishing. He used his spear as a staff, and when he swung it, he used the vibranium material of the staff to transform the shape of the spear and accumulate great kinetic energy. It was as if Jidaka was accumulating energy every time he swung his spear, and this energy would only be unleashed when he fought Turkala. This meant that every time Turkar fought him, he would completely suppress Jidaka in terms of strength. Very quickly, he was hit a few times, and his body under the battle suit suffered serious contusions. His ribs and arms were faintly burning in pain, and there seemed to be signs of bone fractures. On the other hand, Jidaka's barehanded combat techniques were even more ruthless. This murderous demon from the American Special Forces, who had killed countless people in Afghanistan, was ruthless and decisive in his attacks. Knowing the weaknesses of the human body, his combat style was even more lethal, making it difficult for Takara to defend against him. Captain America is facing Moses Magnum, and he wants to end the battle quickly. This is not an unthinkable thing. After all, Moses Magnum is just an arms dealer. He is a mercenary and belongs to ordinary human beings. In any case, it is difficult to compare with Steve, who has used the super soldier serum. So Captain America used the clean and neat military fighting techniques he had learned in the army. But Moses Magnum just opened his right hand and sprinkled a cloud of white powder. He was wearing windproof goggles and a gas mask. How could Steve not be surprised? Steve rolled on the ground and used the vibrational metal shield in front of him, sprinkling sand. Is this a fight between children? I'm already very old. Moses Magnum said, "You're bullying an old man like me, and I can't play some tricks? So what if it's a fight between children? As long as it's useful. The powder I'm sprinkling is poisonous and irritating, specifically targeting the cornea." Captain America kicked him and said, "When it comes to respecting the elderly, I'm 10 years older than you." The windproof glasses that Moses Magnum was wearing suddenly emitted a strong white light. The intensity of the white light was very strong. The light emitted by a light bulb the size of a cigarette, but almost illuminated the entire hall of the palace. Caught off guard, Captain America felt like his corium gold dog eyes were about to go blind. Then he felt a sharp pain in his toes. He hugged his foot and endured the pain. His anger soared to the sky, and he forced his tearful eyes open. He vaguely saw Moses Magnum lift his shoe. The heel of the shoe Moses was wearing had a thick-soled, vibrating gold, heel the size of half a palm. The heel was even made into a small hydraulic mechanism. When he lifted his foot, the heel would retract, and when he stepped on it, the heel would smash down like a hammer. This not only gave him a reverse impact force, but it also allowed him to move faster. It also had a special bonus to stepping on toes. Moses Magnum wore a pair of vibrational metal gloves with barbs on his fists. Captain America could only use his shield to block and defend against a spit. Of course, his spit was also highly corrosive. On one hand, Captain America had to deal with his attacks, and on the other hand, he had to deal with his endless tricks, including Moses Magnum's legs, which were equipped with vibrating gold spikes and impact hammers. Moses Magnum's legs were like a scorpion's tail, and he could attack Captain America's vital points from all sorts of tricky angles and timing. Every part of his body had become a weapon, and had been specially modified, including, but not limited to, eye piercing, chest piercing, throat locking, and knife stabbing. His movements were extremely swift, and he was good at staggered steps, repeated horizontal jumps, rolls, and ground techniques. In fact, Magnum had always wanted to fight Steve at close range. But Steve had managed to avoid direct contact with him with his superb fighting skills. Even so, Steve couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat when he saw Moses's endless high-tech props. He had hidden several human landmines on his body that would suddenly explode with a strong electric current, several human flash bombs that would suddenly explode with a strong light, and hidden weapons dipped in poison. From time to time, he would detonate 2 energy bombs, tear gas bombs, and stun bombs. Moses Magnum used the defensive measures he had prepared in advance to sneak up on Steve, who was caught off guard. Steve truly felt what it meant to be pestering. Moses even installed a kind of vibrating metal blade on his fingernails, which was specially used to scratch people's faces. Steve was caught off guard and was scratched half of his face. Immediately, 5 deep scars appeared on his face. Even Chinong, who was watching from the side, was amazed by Moses's ability to use every part of his body as a weapon. Hawkeye and the others broke out in a cold sweat when they saw Moses's untraceable groin kick. Chinong was filled with emotion. Is this the unrestricted fighting technique created by the legendary martial arts master Chin Hagao? Who would have thought that a legendary martial art of a generation could be seen in this vast land of Africa after seeing Moses throw out 2 iron balls and shoot out an iron net made of gold wire the size of a hair in the air, tightly entangling Team America? He used this hooligan technique that even Yang couldn't do anything about back then. Then he used his heel to hit Steve's crotch, and the powerful plasma and impact drill on his shoes caused the onlookers an indescribable pain. Hawkeye had no choice but to knock a magnetic arrow to try and rescue Steve. At this time, Zhang Shangqi, who hadn't made a move yet, blocked Hawkeye's arrow. Hawkeye sternly said, "I don't want to hurt a child, so you'd better get out of the way." He pointed the arrow at Zhang Shangqi. Zhang Shangqi calmly said, "Your opponent is me. Although I don't agree with his martial arts, this is not a reason for you to besiege me. Let's fight one-on-one." Hawkeye sighed helplessly and loosened the bowstring. The magnetic discharge arrowhead turned into an afterimage and shot out at a speed invisible to the naked eye. But Zhang Shangqi just raised his hand, and the emerald ring on his ring finger shone slightly. The silver-white cold air instantly froze everything in front of him. The metal arrowhead was frozen in his hand, and as the bone-chilling aquamarine true chi gushed out, the arrowhead made of high-strength alloy was frozen into pieces. Zhang Shangqi's other hand punched out. White steam was boiling, wrapping his fist. White Zhen Qi gushed out from the white jade ring on his thumb. The Zhen Qi was extremely hot, dense, and tough. It directly broke Eagle Eye's blocking stance and blocked Eagle Eye's defense, draping over Eagle Eye's chest. Hawkeye was directly thrown out. He felt a hot true chi seal his chest, making it impossible for him to breathe, let alone fight back. Chapter 1064. Wizard Wong was facing Jack the Ripper, who had already transformed into a dark space monster. His thick and sturdy muscles were no joke. He exhaled and let out a loud roar. The fat on his body shook like flowing water, layer by layer, as if it was about to set off waves. His left hand was like a stone tablet while his right hand was activating a spell formation. A black tiger steals the heart passed through the portal that suddenly opened and smashed towards Jack the Ripper's back. Jack's face was hidden under a layer of black fog. He held a scalpel in the bow-holding stance. Just as Wizard Wong smashed his back, he suddenly turned into a cloud of black smoke and soared into the sky, falling towards Wizard Wong. "Domain!" Wizard Wong roared. His right hand condensed into a tiger's claw and slashed towards the black smoke that was rushing towards Jack. Just as his two fingers were about to break through the black smoke, they suddenly bounced up. A few transparent, glass-like space blades that were originally condensed and hidden in his fingernails sliced through the black smoke. Although Jack's figure dispersed in time, he was still caught in the black smoke. Jack cried out in pain in midair. "Whoa!" Wizard Wong let out a strange cry. His hands condensed into tiger's claws, and he took a bow stance in front of his chest. On the other side, Zheng Shangqi's fist that contained the power of rosy afterglow sweep sent Hawkeye flying. The blazing energy made Hawkeye's face turn red. His chest felt empty, and he almost vomited blood. Hearing Wizard Wong's strange cry, Zheng Shangqi couldn't help but look back, giving Hawkeye a chance to catch his breath. Of course, Zheng Shangqi didn't care. Exhaling and making a sound, it sounds like a southern accent. Could it be the Kai Li's Buddhist fist that is popular in Fujian and Guangdong? Zhang Shangqi only felt that this method of making a sound was inexplicably cool, and he was actually a little eager to try it out. The fat Wizard Wong took out an artifact long staff from his back. With a casual pull, he pulled out a long staff that was as long as his eyebrows. The long staff was surrounded by runes. Although it was made of wood, it was a Kamartaj artifact. Wizard Wong shook it out, and his staff skills were orderly, like moving clouds and flowing water. Jack's short knife couldn't get close to the staff. It could be said that he was using a long weapon to bully a short weapon to the extreme. Zhang Shangqi, who was at the side, couldn't help but secretly applaud. This double-clamp single staff, coupled with the exquisite use of the big red flag staff and the small flag staff, as well as the use of the leaning staff and the bridge stool, can be said to be something that ordinary people can't think of, something that has never been done before. Sorcerer Wong hit Jack's chest with his staff, but Jack blocked it with his scalpel. Then he shook his staff. He had already mastered Kamartaj's spell and Kai Li's Buddha's fist. He had the upper hand and forced Jack the Ripper to be unable to take the initiative at all. "Wizard, you're very capable." Zhang Shangqi couldn't help but exclaim. "Of course. Your grandpa Wang, before entering Kamartaj. This is the famous double flower rod of the Hong sect." Master Wang was enjoying the fight to his heart's content, and couldn't help but exclaim. The long staff in his hand was like a flood dragon, overturning rivers and overturning seas, wantonly brandishing it, not giving way to anyone. Facing the black brothers of the poison sect, Chin Ang's resurrected corpse smiled faintly and said, "Get out of my way! You're not my opponent." "Yuruk." Achebi, who was opposite him, said, "It's already a miracle that you were able to save your soul from his hands. To be honest, I'm very surprised to see you, but this is as far as you go. Are you surprised that my soul is still in my body after betraying you?" Chinong said with a smile. Seeing Achebi's jealousy and doubt in front of him, Chinong revealed his white teeth and laughed. "That means, I'm not me." Achebi felt that his strength in his body was like a straw shell in a Category 18 typhoon, rapidly disappearing. His vision began to blur, and he even lost the strength to support his body. He weakly knelt in front of Chinong, so weak that he could barely lift his hands. Looking at his hands that were trembling like a Parkinson's patient, Achebi raised his head in confusion. Chinong just shook his head gently and said, "You shouldn't have sold your soul. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. I'm your boss. I'm in charge of the souls of all humans. Next time, follow a more reliable boss. Mephitis's business has been too poor recently. I'm ready to fire him." Wumuhu put his hands behind his back and turned his back to Strange. He said softly, "Have you ever left this planet? Respected, guardian of the ore? Let me think, what did they call you? It seems to be called Supreme Mage? I think I've seen the previous Supreme Mage. So, how long have you been in office?" Strange said slowly, "Less than 7 years. Less than 7 years. I can say that you're very young." Wumuhu said calmly, "Mage, we need to talk about the fate of this universe." "I don't know what to talk about with you," Strange said coldly. "No, you don't know the truth. Do you think we're here to conquer? That's in the past. I'm not here to conquer, but for you and me, for our survival, for the survival of the entire universe. You can say that I'm here to save. The entire universe has lost its balance. Thanos didn't do it for his desires and ambitions. On the contrary, it was the sacred part of him that made him do it, the part that was filled with love. Yes, I admit that our loving father Thanos can be a little difficult to get along with at times, but you have to believe that today we've come together for the sake of mutual goodwill. We've united these notorious people not because we want to rule the universe, but because we have a sacred and great goal to save the universe." It was as if Strange and Ebony Throat had fallen into a part of the universe, facing the endless river of stars and the dark true void. It was at this moment that an unimaginable entity of darkness appeared in front of them, a being that existed outside of the universe, a being that represented all life and matter. It was death. In the universe, two indescribably huge existences, two kinds of death entangled together, forming the balance of the universe. Did you know that 3 million years ago, all the great and eternal existences in the universe gave up on eternal life and chose death for themselves? They all voluntarily submitted to death. That was to protect the great laws of balance of the universe, where unknown death and known death were entangled. As life flourished, the power of unknown death began to rise above the known death. Therefore, all eternal existences had no choice but to choose their own death, to prevent the imbalance between the two kinds of death from dragging the entire universe into the dark abyss. But that was just a drop in the bucket. The new balance lasted for a mere 3 million years, and the sacrifice of all eternal existences in the universe only lasted for one insignificant era. Finally, our loving father Thanos realized that this wasn't the solution. All unknown death in the universe comes from the continuation of life and the prosperity of civilization. The power of unknown death originates from life, and only by balancing the power of life and death can we avoid destruction. Guardian, you think you're protecting, but you don't know that you're actually condoning destruction. Strange saw the ending of the universe in his eyes. Tears silently slid down his cheeks, and he almost couldn't breathe. His eyes were filled with indescribable darkness. To achieve balance, Thanos decided to follow the laws of balance of the universe and guide the two kinds of death to balance. This means we need to kill half of the lives in the universe to allow the development of the power of life and the power of death to return to balance, the great balance. This is the truth. We have to work hard for everything. Ebony Throat's voice sounded in Strange's ears. The truth of death was clearly seen in his eyes, and he knew that everything was true. Ebony Throat's powerful mental power of persuasion was shaking Strange bit by bit. At this time, Chin-Ong appeared in the mental world where the two were entangled. He touched the eye of Agamotto and turned the time back to 3 minutes ago. Strange reappeared from the portal, and with lingering fear, he chose to forget the truth of Ebony Throat's powerful mental suggestion. He left a suggestion in his consciousness and stopped communicating with Ebony Throat. As soon as he appeared, he directly attacked. Only then did Chin-Ong withdraw his mental power. He thought to himself, "I can't let you ruin this great situation." Chapter 1065. Steve grunted. His mouth and nose were bleeding, and he took 2 steps back. Although he was a superhuman who had been injected with the Superman serum, and his opponent was just a second-rate mercenary who had regained his youth. It was too dirty. Really too dirty. It had to be repeated twice. Steve had never seen such a dirty and unscrupulous hooligan, even in the face of the nine-headed snake. Moses Magnum, who was on the other side, was too dirty when he fought. Moses Magnum relied on his high-tech equipment to force Captain America into a corner. In the middle of the fight, he sprinkled some disc-shaped magnetic generators. Those badge-sized things scattered nearby. Only when they encountered metal that was not degaussed would they quickly stick to it. But when they stuck to the metal, these little things would start to flash red and explode after 2 seconds. All the metal on Moses Magnum's body had been degaussed. Only Steve had to face the bombs that stuck to his shield from time to time. There was also a kind of nanomachines that looked like they were 1/10 the size of a soybean. When they were sprinkled on the ground, they would quickly return to their triangular shape and stick to the ground. Steve now had a few deep wounds on his feet. He had to stand on his tiptoes to fight. Moses Magnum sneered at him. "What's wrong, girl? Are you dancing ballet? You are the most shameless person I have ever seen. Even Hydra can't compare to you." His crotch was aching, his feet were bleeding, and his hands were trembling from the explosion. Even Captain America, who had a good temper, could not bear it. "Thank you for the compliment." Moses Magnum took off his hat. "It's my honor." Steve sighed secretly. He was annoyed by the endless little tricks of his opponent. But that guy was very cunning and slippery like a loach. Steve was constantly disrupted by these little tricks and could not organize an effective attack. Now he was most worried about Hawkeye. Hawkeye was frozen into a sculpture. He looked blankly at the front, and there seemed to be a trace of disbelief on his face. This made Steve very worried. Hawkeye had long retired. He came to Wakanda to help because he recognized him. If he died, how could he face Hawkeye's family? After taking care of Hawkeye, Zhang Shangqi used the Earth Kunlun technique and used the gravity generator ring on his hand to place the gravity distortion point around Wizard Wong's body. The surrounding marble tiles and domes that were attracted by the gravity collapsed one after another, and the fallen pieces of marble were sucked into Wizard Wong's body. Sorcerer Wong's Kai Lifo Fist had already reached the unfathomable realm of combining magic and martial arts. He used his fists to interpret the mysteries of spells and smash the marbles flying towards him into pieces, drawing them into a different space. However, in the end, he was still outnumbered and was trapped in a narrow space by the marbles. The stone coffin, made of crushed stones, imprisoned him. If Zhang Shangqi had not intentionally held back, his body would have long been ground by the marbles and turned into minced meat. Chun Ang's corpse had already dealt with Achebe and was currently sealing Jack the Ripper, who had been severely injured by Wizard Wong. Chun Ong forced the black mist that Jack had transformed into a voodoo doll. When he looked up, he saw Zhang Shangqi walking towards him. Zhang Shangqi said with emotion, "Just now I was excited to fight with my compatriots and accidentally let my people be taken care of by you." He glanced at Achebe, who was paralyzed on the ground, and Jack, who was sealed in the voodoo doll, and said in annoyance, "After all, we are colleagues. I can't just watch you take them away. How about this? I have 2 captives here." He gestured to Hawkeye, who was sealed in ice, and Wizard Wong, who was trapped in the stone coffin. "And you have also captured 2 of my captives. Why don't we exchange?" Zhang Shangqi suggested. Chun Ong did not comment and threw the voodoo doll and Achebe over. Zhang Shangqi then removed the azure blizzard that had frozen Hawkeye and the 2 Kunlun that had suppressed Wizard Wong. Captain May took the opportunity to retreat to Chun Ang's side and helped the weak Hawkeye up. As for Wizard Wong, he was not injured in the 2 Kunlun. He had just been released from the stone coffin, but he was still alert beside Chun Ong. As for Black Panther, he was still entangled with Leopard. Both of them were wearing the indestructible vibranium battlesuit. They were strong in defense, but weak in offense. It was too difficult to determine a winner. On the other side, Strange and Ebony were also in a stalemate. After giving himself a powerful mental suggestion, Strange was immune to some of Ebony Ho's mental attacks. However, he still felt very difficult in the face of Ebony Ho's powerful psychokinesis. With a single thought from Ebony's throat, the surrounding marble stones, the building's domed ceiling, and the huge stone pillars all turned into deadly weapons, smashing toward Strange. He could even use his telekinesis as a sword. The huge telekinesis was extremely sharp and could even directly use it as a weapon. Fortunately, Strange's spirit sense was very sharp, and he could always feel the invisible sort of telekinesis, and he used the spell in his hand to form an energy shield to block it. Feeling the pressure on him increasing, Strange secretly opened the eye of Agamotto. In the time halt, Chin Ang's spirit body stood next to Strange and said, "Dr. Strange, you cheated again." Strange blushed and said, "I'm not afraid of him. It's just that it's not easy to beat him, and we don't have much time left." Chin Ong observed Ebony Ho for a moment, then turned back and said, "I'm afraid you can't do anything to him." After Strange observed the parallel world aside and said, "He has already cultivated his psychic ability to the extent that he can do it with a thought. The reason why he can't undo the time halt is because he has no frame of reference. If a person is isolated from the outside world, he will lose his sense of time. Only when he has a frame of reference with the outside world will he know how time passes. That's the sense of time." Chen Ong continued, "That's why you can't make a move on him. His sense of time is normal now. But once you make a move on him, his spirit will instinctively sense you. With your time as a reference, his spirit will also be able to move at the speed of light, and he will be able to enter a state where time has stopped. Although his abilities are limited, and his psychokinesis will probably not be able to reach the speed of light, the spiritual communication between the two of you can. I can't guarantee that you'll be able to withstand his mind invasion and mental suggestion." "Open the portal," Chinong said. "We have to rescue Turkara's family first." Strange sighed. "That's the only way." Strange opened the portal, and all the hostages present fell into the portal beneath their feet, including the bewitched princess and queen, as well as Turkara's little lover. "Where are the others?" Strange looked at the few tribal elders. "Leave them here." Chen Ong shrugged and said, "I don't think Turkara will care about them." Strange hurriedly undid the time halt. After that, Ebony Ho reacted immediately. He looked at the time gem on Strange's chest and said, "Is it the power of time?" At this time, Princess Su Rue and the queen fell from thousands of meters in the air. Even under control, the three women couldn't help but scream. At this time, from the rear of the spaceship parked on the helipad of the palace, 3 Mark model warframes suddenly rushed out. The 3 warframes rushed into the air and covered the 3 hostages. Captain May watched this scene nervously, and only relaxed when they were all protected by the warframes. He said to the communicator, "Thank you. Little Chili, you've really helped us a lot." "Captain, it's my duty." Little Chili laughed and said, "How's Tawny?" Steve asked. Little Chili Pepper sighed helplessly. "This is terrible. You should come see him. He doesn't look like a technological genius, entrepreneur, Iron Man superhero, but more like a drunkard on the streets. I don't even recognize him now. He's so foreign to me." Steve comforted her. "He's only seriously injured by Sargeraz's mind invasion. We're trying to think of a way to give him psychological treatment. I hope he can recover quickly. Without him, the Avengers won't last long." Steve glanced at the wounded Avengers around him, and Falcon Sam urged him, "Retreat quickly." "Captain, the situation is terrible. The King's guards didn't support T'Challa as we expected. They've all been controlled by Ebony Throat's magic. Now Wakanda's controlled warriors are continuously heading to the palace to support. We can't hold on much longer." Steve saw that the plan had failed more than half, and the only way to preserve the current profits was to decisively cut the losses. He made a prompt decision. "Sam, you guys start retreating. We'll meet up later." Then, through the secret communicator, he said to T'Challa, The situation is worse than we thought. The recovery operation has failed, but the hostages have been rescued. Retreat quickly." Black Panther heard that the hostages had been rescued and breathed a sigh of relief. He was ready to give Leopard a good beating before running away. But at this time, Little Chili suddenly said nervously, "The Warframe's remote control is being disrupted. It's caused by electromagnetic and gravitational waves. Our signal stabilizer can't work. Friday, repair the signal." There's a strong source of interference on the other side. The source of interference must be eliminated. Steve's heart tightened in an instant. Black Panther also heard the conversation on the communicator, and only then did Crow stand up from his throne and clap his hands. "Wonderful, wonderful, but do you think I'll let you just save the hostages and leave?" Crow brushed the dome, and a crack appeared on the huge dome made of marble and vibranium. Through the crack, the Black Panther could see 3 silver and blue armors falling from the sky. He roared, his voice filled with fear and sorrow. Crow laughed. "Kneel." Black Panther's mind was a mess, and countless thoughts and memories burst out, and then came the calmness under extreme emotions. A sentence flashed through his mind. The source of interference must be eliminated. He took a few steps towards Crow and knelt down. Crow removed the interference, and the warframes that enveloped the princess and queen began to restart, stabilizing in midair. At this time, Black Panther's fist sprang out sharp claws, stabbing towards Crow's abdomen. The sharp claws sank into Crow's abdomen, but the man only showed a mocking smile. He pressed his hand on Black Panther's body, and the high-frequency vibrations caused Black Panther's armor to quickly degenerate, revealing Turkara's body. Crow's right hand pressed on the top of Turkara's head, forcing him to look up at the sky. In the sky, a warframe exploded into sparks, and in the already dark Wakanda night sky, the sparks were like beautiful fireworks sprinkling down one after another. Turkara looked at this scene and roared silently, tears gushing out of his eyes. His intense emotions made his body tremble slightly, and the veins on his neck swelled and thickened. He roared continuously, the sound of the wind hissing from his lungs. Crow whispered in his ear, "Did you see that? Black Panther, King exploded. This is what I wanted you to see. This is what I wanted to see, or else I would have killed you yesterday. Thanks to your father, I was a stray dog for a while. But you can't see me as a stray dog forever. I'm different now. You look at me with hatred and disdain. But tomorrow I only want to see one emotion, and that is fear. I am Ulysses Crow." Crow threw Turkara away like a dead dog, then punched the American team's shield, punching a big hole in it and forcing Steve to kneel on the ground. With a casual wave of his hand, a strong tremor caused strange, unbearable pain, causing him to collapse to the ground. With a light stomp of his foot, the resisting shield and border tribe warriors all had their tendons and bones twisted by the vibration, collapsing to the ground. With a wave of his hand, no one could withstand a single round. The conqueror of Wakanda, Jadaka, made a gesture of submission, then stepped on Turkara's head to show the reinforcements of the river, mine and border tribe warriors and elders. The Master of Black Panther. Chapter 1066. Strange endured the severe pain of his muscles and nerve tissues being twisted and shouted into the sky, "Thor! What are you waiting for? If you don't come out, we will all die here." Thunder roared in the sky, and a colorful light descended from the sky, blocking between Crow and the Black Panther. Ulysses Crow just smashed his fist into the space at a vibration frequency calculated at a second, 10-18 seconds, setting off hundreds of millions of space-time ripples in the blink of an eye, causing the expression of Heimdall, who was guarding the Bifrost, to change. He hurriedly walked out of the palace he was guarding and saw cracks appearing on the magnificent Bifrost in front of the capital of Asgard. High-frequency gravitational wave oscillations were transmitted through the wormhole structure of the Einstein-Rosen bridge, causing the Bifrost to resonate. Countless cracks spread on the rainbow-colored bridge. And finally, the end of the bifrost began to shatter. Countless, glass-like, rainbow bridge shattered into fragments the size of a thumb and fell into the endless void under the bridge. On the other end of the Rosen Bridge, on Earth, Thor's figure was punched out of the colorful light by Crow. His face was punched by Crow, and he was smashed into the marble floor of the palace without being able to fight back. Chen Ong couldn't help but look back, unable to bear to witness this embarrassing scene. Crow retracted his fist and chuckled. The god of Asgard? Why are you pretending in front of me? The fluctuations of the universe are nothing to me. You opened a wormhole and came in front of me. Do you think I will see a rainbow? I've seen more than you can imagine. In front of me, opening a massive distorted spacetime and building the Einstein-Rosen bridge that connects this space is no different from opening a door right in front of my face. So, of course, I can punch you in the face through the doorway when you open the door. To warn you, when you open the door to your master's house, learn to knock on the door. Didn't your mother teach you manners, Asgardian? Thunder cried out in pain, covering his face as he got up from the ground, shook his head to dispel the dizziness, and replied, I don't have to be polite to bandits. I came here at the invitation of my master. Banish villains like you who forced your way into this country, usurped the throne, and killed the master here. Asgardians, I know your style. Wu Muhu slowly walked out from behind Crow's back and said, Unbridled, relying on your advanced technology to forcefully invade planets with less advanced technology. You opened the door to Asgard in someone else's land without any scruples. To a certain extent, this is an invasion. You condemn us for invading planets that are not our territory, but you do the same. The Titan god Thanos is honest. He never hides his views. The weak have no power, but the gods of Asgard are hypocritical. You use your words to cover up your invasion. Let me ask you, which country will allow another force to open their doors in their own land? Wu Muhu said, You look down on the weak, just like us, but you always have a set of hypocritical words to cover it up. But in fact, we all know that we all came from the same group of monkeys. Shut up. Thor wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said coldly. He picked up his hammer and said in a deep voice, We came from humble origins, but in the process of protecting this universe, we are great because of this. Asgard is worthy of this world, worthy of the 9 realms we rule. You keep saying that you are protecting this universe, but when Lord Thanos and other great beings are working hard to save this universe, what are you doing? Wu Muhu asked. Saving this universe? Thor sneered. Is this why you want to destroy half of the life in this universe? Steve was dumbfounded when he heard that. He looked up in shock and asked, Wait a minute, what do you mean by destroying half of the life in this universe? If we decide who to destroy with our own will, it can naturally be said that we are biased. But what we bring is no difference, absolute justice. We give absolute equal destruction to the life in this universe, regardless of whether it is high or low. This can prove that we are completely selfless. Wu Muhu said. Thor shouted angrily, You are not qualified to destroy life in the universe. No one and nothing can give you this right. The Prince of Asgard. Wu Muhu said, You don't understand the meaning of life at all. This meaning transcends everything. In the face of this, humanity is useless, morality is useless, compassion is useless, equality is useless, democracy is useless, freedom is useless. All the value of life is based on survival. Once it goes against survival, everything created by life is meaningless. In the face of the survival of the universe, survival is the greatest morality, compassion, conscience, and awareness. Your tolerance is not enough to be a god. Wu Muhu said, The real god is the Titan, the awareness of Thanos, who bears everything, bears the weight of the universe, whether it is good or evil. There is no good or evil in a god. God is responsibility. So you who avoid the responsibility of life choice are not worthy of being a god. Thor roared, God will protect everything. Amidst the lightning and thunder, the powerful force swept everything in an instant. Amidst the dancing thunder, several lightning bolts struck Wumuhu's chest, striking him to the ground. Wumuhu's spiritual hint was simply and brutally destroyed by Thor, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Just as Thor was about to swing Wumuhu's hammer for the second time and smash the lackey of Thanos into ashes, a man stood in front of Wumuhu. He raised his hand and grabbed the head of the godly hammer, a divine weapon made of neutron star nucleus. Crow grabbed Wumuhu's hammer and sneered, What a powerful divine weapon! I have long had the power to destroy Wakanda, as early as when I killed the previous Black Panther, but I held back. Now it seems that I was right, conquering this small country, and so many people jumped out to make trouble for me. If I was still at the level I was 3 years ago, I really couldn't beat you, but now it's different. Crow sighed. The 4th level of the 12 stages of vibranium, the star-breaking realm. Crow smiled and said, Let me have the power to destroy this small planet under my feet. What is that saying again? If you have 1 nuclear weapon, you will be the world's biggest terrorist and the enemy of all civilized countries. But if you have 100 nuclear weapons, you will be a strong country in the region. If you have 1,000 nuclear weapons, you will be a strong pillar of world peace. Chapter 1067. According to the law of conservation of energy, I don't have such great power. Klaus said, but what destroys things is often the thing itself. I'm just the external cause that triggers the internal cause. The powerful vibrational force penetrated into Mjolnir's hammer in his hand. The powerful gravitational force of the neutron star nucleus was cleverly balanced by the forging skills of the dwarves, creating the material shell of Mjolnir. But now, Klaus could clearly feel the vibrational force of the neutron star nucleus in his hand. It was like the heart of a planet, constantly emitting gravitational and battery waves. The vibranium that made up Klaus' body captured and sensed this vibration, then conducted it, and in turn, used this vibration to destroy its own balance. All of this sounded very long, but in fact it was very short. Cracks began to appear on Mjolnir's body, and the cracks rapidly expanded, running through the entire hammer. Thor, who was connected to Mjolnir's mind, looked at his hammer in disbelief as it shattered into countless pieces in Klaus' hands. No. Thor looked up in horror and shouted, Father! How did this happen? It seems that I've proven myself. I can crush a weapon forged from a neutron star nucleus, so it shouldn't be too difficult to crush this planet under my feet, right? Klaus asked Steve. So will S.H.I.E.L.D. carefully consider how to unite a strong pillar of world peace like me? I don't know if S.H.I.E.L.D. will consider it. Steve said, but I will not compromise with you. What a pity. Klaus shook his head. He looked back at Thor, who was still looking at the sky in disbelief, and said to him, Are you awake now, Hammer God? Chun-Ong said calmly, You can't destroy this planet. The Human Revolutionary Alliance has used the mirror dimension replication technology and time reversal technology to put at least 3 layers of insurance on this planet. And I don't think that when you make a move, the Apocalypse Laboratory's protection measures and mechanisms on this planet will be indifferent. Moreover, we are still in internal conflict on Earth. I need your attitude. Chun-Ong temporarily became a diplomat and said, Have you formed an alliance with the galactic warlords, Titan Thanos? If so, we will carefully evaluate whether you have the possibility of becoming a spokesperson for an alien force. And will you participate in Thanos' plan? If I can ensure my safety by destroying other lives. Klaus spread his hands and said, Then why not? At this point, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He quickly overturned what he had just said and said, Wait, I still need to think about it. He pondered and said, "What if I say yes? Then you will be recognized as an enemy of the CPL." Chinong said, "We will close all diplomatic channels and use force to solve all problems. I need to think about it. After careful consideration, I don't think there's a need for me to betray Earth's position," Crow stammered. "I don't support it. I don't oppose it. All of this has nothing to do with us. In any case, Slayer Hegemon had succeeded. I will not be unlucky. Slayer Hegemon failed. I won't lose anything. That is to say, you won't help us capture the infiltrator from the alien forces. Ebony Throat." Crow smiled and said, "This requires diplomatic negotiations. We will not take the initiative to express our friendship before the YPG and SHIELD complete friendly negotiations with us. Only after the negotiations are completed and you acknowledge our actual rule over Wakanda will I expel him as a gesture of friendship. So, we can only discuss this at the next negotiation, right?" Chinong asked. Crow sat on the throne and crossed his legs. "Yes, I need to see your sincerity first." Ebony Throat stood at the side. He did not respond to Crow's blatant declaration of betrayal. It seemed that he had tacitly agreed to Crow's betrayal. "As far as I know," Chinong said, "there are 5 tribes on the African continent, each guarding a part of the Messiah who created mankind and the 4 nights on Earth. Wakanda's vibranium is one of them. If the 5 elements are gathered together, they can restore the creation of the apocalypse and a part of the defense mechanism of the huge laboratory called the universe. That is a destructive weapon that can completely kill half of the life in the universe. This is nonsense." Crow said, "I have never heard of this. That is to say, you won't protect vibranium from being used by the alien forces, right?" Chinong asked directly. Crow replied, "Before the friendly agreement between us is signed, I will not make any guarantees, because the guarantee is mutual. If you want my guarantee, you must first acknowledge my right over Wakanda." "All right," Chinong said. "My exchange with you on behalf of the YPG ends here. More specific exchanges will be discussed with you by our diplomats at a later time. But I want to reiterate on behalf of the YPG that the YPG will not recognize the results of your invasion of Wakanda. So, the friendly agreement does not exist. I want to leave here now," Chinong said. "Sure," Crow said, "as long as you don't take these people." He gestured to Hawkeye, Steve, Thor, and Chara, who was being stepped on by Jadaka. Chinong was silent for a moment. Just when everyone thought he would leave alone, he activated the gravitational generator on the spaceship, and a huge gravitational pulse shot towards Crow. Crow punched the gravitational pulse and abruptly stopped the destructive wave of gravitational waves. Strange saw the opportunity and shouted, "Run!" He opened the portal to the interior of the spaceship and took Hawkeye in first. Steve took the opportunity to hit Jadaka and send him flying. He supported Chara and followed closely behind. Mage Wong covered them with a magic shield. Thor grabbed Jadaka by the waist and threw him to the ground. Then he looked around and saw that Zhang Shangqi and Ebony Ho had no intention of stopping him. He was the last to enter the spaceship. As soon as the spaceship started, they heard Crow's roar, and a powerful vibration stirred up white air ripples and attacked the spaceship. Chin-Ong used gravitational waves to send out a high-frequency vibration while explaining to Steve and the others. After studying vibranium, we have discovered a specific frequency that will strongly stimulate vibranium. Now we have no choice but to try. What will happen to that frequency? Steve asked nervously. Chin-Ong hesitated. I don't know. Maybe this is an alarm clock that will wake it up. We discovered this fluctuation through continuous activation of the physical properties of vibranium. This is a weak fluctuation emitted by previous nuclear explosions since mankind entered the nuclear age. According to research, vibranium gradually became active in the last century because of the stimulation of this fluctuation. The people of Wakanda were affected by the activity of vibranium, and there was a technological explosion. But this fluctuation is very weak, so we don't know what will happen if we strengthen the stimulation. Wake it up. Strange repeated Chin-Ang's words, then asked, "Who will it wake up?" Chin-Ang was silent for a moment. He had already compiled this high-frequency fluctuation and pressed the button to let the gravitational generator produce this frequency of gravitational waves. Only then did he reply, "Wake vibranium!" At this time, the gravitational wave swept over the vibranium mine. The huge vibranium meteorite buried deep underground burst out with a strong blue light. Crow sensed all this. The explosion of the gravitational wave and the response of the vibranium. The rocks and soil floating on the surface of the vibranium meteorite began to fall, revealing the vibranium meteorite that was even larger than the capital city of Wakanda. The powerful energy wave swept through the vicinity of the vibranium meteorite. Tall buildings were collapsing and mountains were shattering. Chin-Ang's spaceship had already flown to the sky above Bonanza. Looking down at the ground, one could see an energy wave sweeping across Wakanda. All vibranium resonated with the huge meteorite and lost their physical properties. The battle suit on Black Panther's body began to degenerate, and Crow's 12 golden body of vibranium was also disrupted by this energy wave, making his vibrations temporarily unable to leave his body. He could only roar and watch them leave. Chapter 1068. After leaving the capital of Wakanda, Chin-Ang was busy communicating with the YPG. The heroes were all dispirited, and the atmosphere on the spaceship seemed a little lifeless. Steve saw Black Panther T'Challa sitting next to his sister, Princess Surue, clutching his head tightly with both hands and burying his head between his legs. He had not moved for a long time. Steve sighed and sat next to T'Challa. Looking at the sleeping princess and future princess in the medical cabin, he whispered, "Have you found a way to help them recover?" Strange frowned. Ebony Throat's mind control is very powerful. I need to take them to Kamartaj for treatment. Can I go with you? T'Challa's voice was hoarse as he suddenly raised his head and asked, "I'm very sorry." Steve saw Black Panther's bloodshot eyes and said guiltily. T'Challa shook his head. "You did nothing wrong. Captain, I was too incompetent. I couldn't protect my family and country. The cause of everything was because I was too weak. Thank you all for your selfless help. Without you, I wouldn't have been able to save Surue and Najia." Chin-Ang set the autopilot and returned to the cabin. He said to Steve, "The YPG's troops were blocked, and the U.S. strongly protested against our interference in Wakanda's political situation. The greedy capitalists are ready to make a move. Your old boss, Nick Fury, is the instigator. As I expected, as soon as we left SHIEL, they immediately began to appease Crow. Like Chamberlain before the 1930s? Hawkeye sneered. Is SHIELD going to make a Munich agreement with Crow regarding the vibranium mine? Steve said angrily. Sounds like it. T'Challa, who was well versed in history and British and American culture, said, "It sounds like I can only do Czechoslovakia and cede my Sudetenland, or hand over the vibranium mine to the 5 countries. So the YPG can't interfere in the situation in Wakanda when the U.S. strongly protests." Chin-Ang concluded. "Even if Crow colluded with aliens?" Steve roared. As soon as we left, the one-eyed man who saw everything immediately hooked up with Crow. He had shamelessly reached a compromise with Crow, who had invaded Wakanda. Now, Crow had probably gotten the friendly agreement he wanted, which was to expel Ebony Throat from the country. Very soon, we will be able to see the news in America about the dictator of Wakanda, T'Challa, being exiled by a domestic revolution. Chin-Ang said sharply, "Impossible." Steve did not believe it at all. The American people will not support the mercenaries and bandits who invade Wakanda, but the capitalists will. Chin-Ang said, "I got the news from the Revolutionary Alliance. Crow announced the value of vibranium and Wakanda's technology. You don't know that it shocked the entire industry. Stark Industries bought Wakanda's newly issued vibranium futures, and Crow sold Wakanda's interests that did not belong to him to the world. You should have seen yesterday's big economic news. Wakanda's vibranium futures. That was really a frenzy of carving up. Imagine Wakanda is in the hands of their king, the country is closed, and Wakanda is in the hands of Crow. The benefits are shared equally. Those financial groups and capitals, who will they support? Chin-Ong asked sharply. Steve was speechless. He bowed his head and said dispiritedly, "What have those people turned our country into?" Chala had been a king for a few days and was well aware of this interest relationship. He said calmly, "Now Wakanda can no longer be closed. Whether we want to or not, we have been involved in the tide of the world crisis. In this case, the tradition of Wakanda is no longer an obstacle to me. I am willing to build a more open Wakanda. Will this bring me more friends?" "If it was before Crow usurped power, this would bring you a lot of friends," Chin-Ong said. "But at this time, they have become Crow's friends because he is more generous and he holds all the cards in Wakanda. Now you have nothing but the identity of a king. The rivers, mines, and border tribes have all chosen to support Jadaka because he defeated you in the battle for the throne. The loyalty of the tribes is far more fragile than you think. They know the importance of survival." Chin-Ong glanced at the information in his hands and said, "Of course, there are people who want to contact you, but they are all the losers and discontented people from the previous round of carving up. They need your promise to sell out Wakanda for more benefits in exchange for their support." "Tell them," Chala said angrily. "Don't even think about it." Chin-Ong spread his hands and said, "This way, Crow will have a few more friends." Steve said solemnly, "If I didn't hear wrong before, that meteorite came from one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. If you want to use this as a reason to convince those who are crazy about vibranium, then I can only say that you are too naive. Vibranium is not a secret in the industrial world. Its value far exceeds that of gold, and it can be said to be the concentrated embodiment of technology and wealth. In the past, when a little bit of Wakanda was leaked, its charm made those hyenas crazy. Now the vibranium deposits are like mountains of gold, and those industrial groups and financial groups have been bewitched. They have repeatedly studied the vibranium they have bought, and some have even named the next era the vibranium era. They firmly believe that since the inferior black Africans can rely on it to create a miracle country, then the much smarter, superior whites can do even better. This is not something that can be quelled by your empty talk about the apocalypse." Black Panther said in a trembling voice, "My compatriots are not inferior people. I believe this, but you have to make those racists believe it." Chin-Ong said, "They are not a minority in the scientific and industrial world. You have achieved brilliant scientific and technological achievements, but not only have you not won respect, but it has made those racists even more greedy. They have even declared that black people do not deserve to have vibranium." Chala clenched his fists. The pain of the subjugation of his country and the humiliation that the black people were forced to accept made his tears flow uncontrollably. Chin-Ong sighed and changed the topic. "But this is not the worst news." Steve, Hawkeye, Sam, and Strange had already gathered around Sorcerer Wong and the others. They listened to Chin-Ong say, "I have been studying Ebony Throat's intentions in helping Crow control Wakanda until I heard that ancient legend. It is said that humans originated in Africa, in the Red Sea region, which is now Egypt. They accepted the apocalypse and evolved from ancient apes into humans. But the ancient ape tribe that evolved, Eve's tribe, was an ancient ape with extraordinary abilities. The ancient ape tribe that did not leave Africa was tested by the apocalypse to verify whether they were the most outstanding race, the race needed by the apocalypse, but the ancient apes failed. Their civilization was destroyed, and the remaining ancient apes could only pray to the Creator for survival. So the Creator let his adopted son lead 4 knights and descend a part of his power. The ancient apes surrounded these 5 powers and formed 5 ancient tribes, sealing their wisdom and power. They guarded their own seals, and, according to the agreement, once the ancient apes felt that their civilization could accept the challenge, they could awaken these 5 powers, take back everything, and face the test of the Creator. Chapter 1069. Strange said solemnly, "I've also heard of a similar version, but it's not as detailed. So, if these 5 powers are activated, Africa will face a catastrophe, and the test of the Creator will come again? Not Africa," Chin Ong said slowly, "but all of humanity." Strange was about to refute, but then he realized and said solemnly, "You mean the apocalypse destroyed the ancient ape civilization, and their descendants are us. Even if the current human civilization is the successor of the ancient ape civilization, if the descendants of the ancient ape open the seal, it will be the entire human race that will face the challenge? Is the black man human?" Chen Ong asked a question that Strange could not give a second answer to. Seeing that he could not answer, Chen Ong continued, "Since the black man is human, then after the 5 ancient tribes open the seal, the civilization that will face the challenge of the Creator is, of course, the current human civilization. In order to screen out the best races and civilizations, the Creator sowed them throughout the galaxy and even the entire universe. And this screening is the nightmare of all creatures in the universe, the apocalypse. If the 5 seals are broken, then the apocalypse calamity, the 10,000-year demonic tribulation, will immediately descend. Everyone present sucked in a breath of cold air. The ancient history of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s investigation, the last time apocalypses will descended, the unparalleled power and the terrible disaster he brought, were still fresh in everyone's memory. However, that was only a negligible projection of apocalypse's will, a taboo creator, a little spirituality. Once this test really came, then humanity and even the entire universe would face a life-and-death situation. But Strange said the master of Ebony Maw, the Titan god Thanos, was precisely trying to prevent the apocalypse from destroying the universe. Why would they release the apocalypse test? The test of the apocalypse is only aimed at the current human civilization. At worst, the entire Earth will be involved, so as long as humanity is destroyed, the whole disaster will naturally subside, and the apocalypse will withdraw the test, waiting for the next development of human civilization. So, Thanos is playing with fire. He is confident that the apocalypse will not expand and will not cause a devastating disaster to the entire universe. Then how can we stop this crazy behavior of Thanos? Hawkeye asked. Chin Ong replied, "It's very simple to stop him. Just hand over Earth's infinite raw stone to Thanos and let him destroy half of the lives in the universe. Then we'll choose the second option," Steve said. "Kill Thanos and his allies." Chin Ong pondered for a brief moment before continuing. "There's another piece of bad news. One of the ancient tribes protecting the seal of the apocalypse, the Ndapaya tribe of the East African coast, was submerged by a tsunami yesterday. I suspect that Ebony Throat may have convinced a new ally, the Atlanteans. They manipulated the seawater to drown the Ndapaya tribe and seize the Stairway of the Sun." Atlanteans? Steve was surprised. Aren't they hiding at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean and not communicating with the outside world? Why would they get involved? You don't know the hostility of the Atlanteans towards the current humans. They think that you monkeys have occupied their land, and even pretend to be humans. God knows how much they want to cleanse you, vile spawns of the apocalypse. Therefore, Ebony Throat is using the Atlanteans' fear of the apocalypse to destroy you, and at the same time prevent the universe from falling into the hands of the apocalypse. This is entirely possible. Chin Ong continued. There's also another ancient tribe, the Voodoo sect that guards the power of the Death Knights. It was also attacked yesterday. Chin Ong turned to Strange. The enemy is someone you know. Then he read out a name that Strange was unfamiliar, yet familiar at the same time. Baron Mordo. Do you know him? Chenong said. He controls the voodoo sect's headquarters in Haiti. Now, the voodoo doll that represents souls has fallen into the hands of the enemy. Humanity is on the brink of extinction, Steve said solemnly. We must find a way to fight against Crow, Ebony Throat, and the allies of Thanos, as well as the Earth forces that Ebony Throat has persuaded to ally with Thanos. Our strength is very weak, and Asgard can't take care of itself. Hey, I'm still here, Thor protested. The Avengers have suffered heavy losses because of Adam. Shield has appeased them. We must unite with a new core and gather the heroes of the world to fight against them, to stop their plot to start the apocalypse. I suggest, Thor shouted. Do you want to set up a new Avengers? Or a powerful Avengers? The Ultimate Avengers? Or the Ultimate Battle Team? I think the name Illuminati is better, Hawkeye suggested. At this time, a low voice interrupted their brainstorming about the name of the new organization. Chenong whispered, Why should we set up a new organization? There are many organizations willing to protect this world and Earth. Come on, Thor said. Shield has already appeased them. Shield is not doing anything but SHIELE. As predecessor organization is still around. Chenong said, You mean the Homeland Strategic Defense and Logistics Agency. Hawkeye read out the awkward name. He spread his hands and said, I don't think it can fight against the collective will of the American consortiums. Chenong looked at the tall pyramid that appeared on the edge of the horizon and said slowly, Since ancient times, the spear has been in the east, the shield is in the west. Steve Rogers suddenly looked up at the ancient ruins on the horizon. In 2620 BC, the power of famine guarded by the Ndapaya tribe, the Stairway of the Sun, was triggered by the arrogance of humanity. The powerful mutant Stairway of the Sun that ran amok in the universe and fed on living planets was revived. The insects that pollinated this terrible plant underwent a terrible evolution. A new species, the deadly existence, known as the brood insectoids, was born. Just a tiny bit of the power of famine brought a fatal crisis to humanity at that time. The brood swept through the African continent and almost destroyed the ancient Egyptian civilization. It was at that time that an outstanding hero of humanity stepped forward. He said, Our world should not end like this. So he led the Egyptians to inflict heavy damage on the brood insectoids and forced them to retreat into space. He stopped the Stairway of the Sun from reviving and protected the entire human civilization. He held a spear in one hand and a shield in the other. To commemorate this great redemption, the two weapons he used when he led humanity to resist the brood became the secret keepsakes of humanity. Since ancient times, the spear was in the east and the shield was in the west. Chapter 1070. I'll be in charge of the spear. You'll be in charge of the shield. Chenong finally said to Rogers, What is he talking about? Hawkeye asked Rogers, suspiciously as he watched Chenong leave. Rogers was also puzzled, but he inexplicably recalled some of the relics handed over to him by his old lover, Carter's niece, and some of the words Carter said to him before he died. A vague shadow appeared in his mind. Wait, Rogers said to himself, he's asking us for the shield. Hawkeye was surprised. Shield? What shield? Rogers called Stark. After a while, a drunk man picked up the phone and muttered, Old Popsicle, it's rare that you still remember to call me. I should be glad that you can still see the name of the caller. Steve sighed and said, I need to know something about your father and take a look at the relics he gave you. Send them to me now. I know you've made digital files for those files and relics. Ask Friday to give them to me. I've never understood. Rogers said, Why would Howard suggest the formation of the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Security Bureau, and then give it a long and stinky name? It wasn't until a few years ago that they came up with an abbreviated name. If the name is not an accident, but an inheritance, a historical inheritance, then everything can be explained. A few minutes later, Rogers received the digital files Tawny had created for his father Howard's relics. He opened the file and said, "This is Tawny's style. He always likes to reconstruct the remnants of the past in information, as if this can retain those memories." Rogers read a large number of files left by Agent Carter and Howard, which recorded the establishment of SHIELD, demolition, reconstruction, and the celebration of several founders when they moved into the new headquarters. His memory came alive little by little. Compared to the current era, these shadows of the past that stayed on paper just made him familiar. It made him feel as if he was next to several old friends. Rogers was a little distracted. He stared at the young Carter, Howard, and the SHIELD badge on the shield behind them. "I wish I could stay with you in that era. This era is too strange, and it doesn't belong to me. Here, I'm like a lonely veteran coming out of history. My body may be young, but my heart is already old and burdensome." Rogers gently rubbed Carter's photo with his thumb and read in his heart. He noticed that the style of the SHIELD badge in the photo was somewhat different from the current one. The current SHIELD eagle, with the abstraction of industrial design, is composed of a few simple lines, but the eagle at that time had a much softer curve, like a hand-painted eagle. He noticed a few details in the photo, and he immediately broke away from the nostalgia of the past. "I remember SHIELD has a base near the Red Sea." Hawkeye looked at Steve, who appeared at the door in surprise, and heard him say, "Let them send someone to pick us up." The Quinjet hovered on the tarmac of the SHIELD hub headquarters. As the canopy overhead was pushed closed by the motor, Steve walked down the cabin and saw Nick, the one-eyed chocolate bald man. Nick smiled and said, "I will explain to you about Wakanda." Steve said, "I don't need your explanation. Crow is not our enemy. Aliens are. We can't force him to the side of Thanos. Sometimes we need to make some compromises. The reason why Crow is not your enemy is because vibranium is your friend." Steve's face was not good. He said to Nick Fury, "That's why you compromised, and I advise you to be careful of your friend. Maybe it doesn't want to be friends with you. I know vibranium may have something to do with war." One-Eyed said, "That's why we have to control it." Steve said to him, "Take me to the main conference room, the one that Howard often uses." "Howard has never been to the hub," Nick said indifferently, "but SHIELD will definitely build a conference room of that style for him." Steve said calmly, "The founders of SHIELD are Howard and Colonel Phillips, but I found out in some other information that it's far more than that. Nathaniel Richards, the father of Dr. Reed in the Fantastic Four, was also the founder of SHIELD. They have a conference room that looks like a courthouse, with 5 seats on the top looking down. Behind them is a wall with the emblem of SHIELD and the 9 planets that revolve around SHIELD, like the sun. Of course, it might be 8 now, and their orbit around the emblem of SHIELD has a radioactive pattern like the sun. Can you take me there now?" Nick Fury stared at him for a long time before he said, "You've described it so clearly, of course I know. Please come with me." On the way, Cyclops explained when Howard founded SHIELD, it was an authoritative organization, even independent of the government. Just like the FBI at the time, this organization had its own will. They set up a conference hall that was as high up as a courtroom. But this organization will eventually return to its original position, succumb to the government, and become an intelligence service organization. At that time, the ancient courtroom will no longer be applicable. We need to show obedience to the government and not directly belong to the World Security Council, because the world's interests are complicated, but the interests of the United States are singular. SHIELD is rooted in the United States, and it can't always wear the skin of an international organization. Show independence. As Nick Fury spoke, he pushed open the door of a secret conference hall in the hub. The inside was just as Steve had described. Agent Carter insisted on moving the conference hall of the original headquarters here. Perhaps this is an old man's nostalgia for the past, so we also kept this place. Steve looked at the spotless hall and the high-tech equipment that had been used on the seats. He frowned and said, "This doesn't look like it's rarely used." Steve came to the seat and faced the wall inlaid with the S-H-I-E-L-D emblem. He pressed his right hand on the S-H-I-E-L-D emblem. Fortunately, he was tall enough. He pressed it a few times tentatively. The sensitive touch of his hand let him discover the secret. He twisted the emblem down, and the chassis of the emblem made a clicking sound of mechanical gears rotating. Just like the turntable of a safe, the eagle shield began to turn. Steve turned it 3 times and found that the eagle on the shield began to emerge. He recalled the eagle shield in the old photo. The eagle's head on the old shield was twisted to the left, and now the eagle's head was turned to the right. Steve moved the eagle's head, and it turned to the left. At this moment, Nick Fury's expression couldn't help but change. The eagle shield emitted the sound of mechanical gears twisting, and the entire shield suddenly caved in, neatly splitting apart from the middle, revealing a circular hole. Below the hole, an eagle relief with ancient Egyptian motifs appeared. A golden round shield had appeared where the S-H-I-E-L-D emblem used to be. Steve took off the round shield and looked at the golden shield. This golden shield was full of historical texture. It was composed of red and gold, and there was an ancient Egyptian-style eagle engraved on it, representing the pharaoh's holy eagle. The round shield had a golden texture, but Steve could feel its strange texture with his tentacles. It was another kind of strange vibranium alloy, which made the round shield's defense even better than the original vibranium shield in Steve's hand. Steve murmured, "I know what template Huidahua used to create that round shield." Rather than saying that the shield in Steve's hand was Huidahua's original vibranium alloy round shield, it would be better to say that the shield that symbolized the American spirit was actually made by Huidahua in imitation of this shield. This was the real shield and the origin of S-H-I-E-L-D. Steve returned to Egypt with this shield. At the airport of S-H-I-E-L-D, Egyptian base, as soon as Steve got off the plane, he saw a small gray-black spaceship parked nearby. Chen Ong waited under the spaceship, and a team of soldiers wearing Chinese military uniforms walked out of the spaceship. They handed a golden spear they carried with them to Chen Ong. The spearhead of the spear was like an open wing, and the same red and gold pattern formed the wings of the spearhead. The Step Pyramid, or the Step Pyramid of Sankara, designed and built by Imhotep, is the oldest of all the pyramids in Egypt. In a secret temple inside the pyramid, Chen Ong and Steve stood on both sides of the gate that symbolized the underworld. There were 2 ancient reliefs on the gate. Steve placed the shield brought back from S-H-I-E-L-D in the groove of the ancient stone sculpture and perfectly inlaid it, while Chen Ong inserted the spear handed to him by the Republic of Republic into the keyhole of the stone gate. As the spear key twisted, the entire pyramid trembled slightly. From the outside, the entire pyramid slowly split along the edge, revealing a metal pyramid made of golden vibranium alloy. The tip of the metal pyramid shot out a beam of platinum light that soared straight into the sky, disappearing into the heavens. The shadow of the pharaoh's eagle was projected in the sky, visible to half the world. Chen Ong looked at the golden pyramid that appeared in front of him, and a playful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The interior of the metal pyramid was decorated with the characteristics of ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, ancient China, and other civilizations. It was full of mystery and elegance. The completely cracked step pyramid became a takeoff passage, allowing the entire metal pyramid to slowly float in the air. What was exposed on the surface was only a trivial part of it. Underground, there was a larger body. What appeared in front of them was the secret base of the Holy Shield Brotherhood, the floating pyramid. Chapter 1071. Inside the floating pyramid was a huge war fortress. At this time, the entire pyramid fortress had reached an altitude of about 30,000 meters above the atmosphere, orbiting the Earth. This war fortress, left behind by the Holy Shield Brotherhood for the future war against aliens and the Four Horsemen, contained a large number of vibranium weapons and floating battleships. The floating battleships were made of vibranium alloy as if they were made of gold, and the indestructible metal hull was attached to a protective shield that flowed with blue energy. It was shaped like a wooden boat in ancient Egypt, with embossed patterns that represented the sun flowing on it. Chun Ong led the group to the cabin where the fleet was parked and said, "These are sunboats, medium-sized war machines made of vibranium produced in Wakanda using the technology of an ancient civilization. In the books of the Divine Spear Bureau, they are called sunboats. Legend has it that the ancient Egyptian sun god Ra rode a golden boat through the sky, and when night fell, he would enter the underworld on the golden boat. At that time, there would be terrifying monsters spying on him, so Seth and Mahan would protect him." Strange explained the ancient Egyptian myth and asked curiously, "Did the name sun boats originate from this story?" Chin Ong cleared his throat and glanced at Strange. In fact, these war machines were built in 2620 BC, when the myth of Ra had yet to take shape. In fact, it was the history of the Brotherhood of the Holy Shield that created the myth and not biochemistry. The founder of the Brotherhood of the Holy Shield, Imidin, was revered as the god of medicine and science in Egyptian history, and in fact he was the only human to be revered as a god in the West. Let's not talk about whether the name and image of sunboats influenced the later myths of ancient Egypt. They were called sunboats because, during the war against the famine mutant Browd, these ships would carry a type of weapon, and everyone who saw the power of that weapon would claim that they saw the sun. That's how the ships got their name. "The sun?" Steve Rogers said solemnly. "You're saying that they're ancient nuclear weapons." "Clean nuclear weapons." The officer sent by the YPG suddenly appeared from behind and explained, "I just went to the armory to check. Inside, there are some neutron bombs loaded in the outer shell of vibranium. The creator here used the special properties of vibranium to make the radioactive objects inside fall into hibernation. They strangely stopped their radiation, and they haven't even passed their first half-life. In other words," Steve said, "these nuclear weapons, yes, they can still be used." The YPG special agent said, "In fact, they are not conventional nuclear weapons. The neutron bomb is also known as the weak shock wave strong radiation bomb. When it explodes, it can release a large number of deadly neutrons and greatly reduce the effect of the shock wave. On the battlefield, the neutron bullet only kills living targets such as people, and does not destroy buildings, technical equipment, and other equipment. This is a type of nuclear weapon used to destroy carbon-based organisms and avoid large-scale destruction. This is far beyond my expectations," Turkara said. "I thought they relied on spears and shields to defeat those alien insectoids." Also, Turkara looked at the floating pyramid with a terrible expression. "This place is filled with vibranium. Where did the Brotherhood of Holy Shield get their vibranium from? I think it's necessary to discuss this." "From Wakanda," the YPG special agent said. "We just checked the database here, and it's hard to imagine that the entire database of the floating pyramid is made up of a very complicated differential machine. The parts made of vibranium are only microns in size and are very precise and powerful. It can be said to be the pinnacle of mechanical computing. Interestingly, the input and output data of these differential machines are also binary units, 0 and 1. Strange asked with interest, "What an interesting coincidence." The YPG special agent awkwardly but politely corrected him. "It's yin and yang. The data here is represented by trigrams, and the entire database is a cutting-edge mathematical system with the Book of Changes as its core. Its underlying mechanical language is quite different from C language. It is a system developed from trigrams and includes fuzzy judgment and binary calculation. We suspect that the mechanical language of this system is made up of Lianshan, Wuzong, and Zhou Sanja. Because of this, we can quickly crack the underlying language and then use the quantum AI to translate it. Okay, we'll discuss these ancient civilizations and super ancient technologies later, Chen Ong said. Tell me about the findings in the database. Fortunately, they don't use hieroglyphics, the special agent joked. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to crack it at all. We found that this floating fortress was originally built by the ancient civilizations on Earth to help ancient Egypt. It was a war fortress to fight against the famine mutant blood. The records show that, but the relationship between the civilizations on Earth is closer than we thought. That was the era before the collapse of the Tower of Babel. After the seal in Africa had a problem, in order to help the ancient Egyptian civilization fight against the invasion of the mutants, they eliminated the budding disaster. All the civilizations sent their elites, contributed their resources and technology, and worked together to build this war fortress. Finally, under the command of the Egyptian sage, En-Hetien, they defeated the mutants. In order to thank them for their friendship, En-Hetien gave his spear and shield to the two civilizations that helped them the most at that time, Babylon and Huaxia. At the same time, he announced that this fortress would not be used for the civil war between the ancient civilizations. The Egyptians buried it underground and built the first pyramid in human history on top of it, imitating the appearance of this fortress. The ancient civilizations agreed that this fortress could only be used when humanity as a whole faced external disasters. In order to maintain and guarantee the maintenance of this war fortress, the various civilizations sent out their own sages. They controlled this terrifying war machine and worked together to operate it to deal with the common crisis and the future apocalypse. This was the embryonic form of the Holy Shield Brotherhood. This fortress used the metallurgy of Huaxia and Atlantis, using the Wakanda tribe's vibranium as the raw material. The ancient Babylonians built its anti-gravity system. The Egyptians built the solar arc to protect it, and the ancient Hindus contributed their neutron weapon, Urnia. The Dapaya tribe created a super warrior serum, which made the warriors operating the fortress incomparably powerful. The Norse Asgardians built its energy system, the Atlanteans were responsible for its defense system, and the Chinese created its brain. The ancient Greeks created its navigation system. It's the crystallization of the ancient civilization's technology. It carried several powerful weapons, puppets controlled by magicians, beasts commanded by wizards, high-energy weapons created by gods and demigods, lasers, neutron bullets, magic, and dimensional machines. Why did these ancient civilizations and technology disappear from history? Strange asked in confusion. The commissioner's expression changed slightly when he heard that. Turkara also asked, Wakanda contributed vibranium? This is all evidence, but why didn't our ancestors record anything? So much vibranium was used up, and yet there's no trace of Wakanda's history? I can't believe it. The commissioner stammered. Maybe they didn't want to record it. Why? Turkara asked nervously. The commissioner answered awkwardly but politely. The ancient civilizations were united because they belonged to the same race, the ancient humans. The current human species was their slaves back then. They saw us as monkeys, slaves, and inferior beings. That's why the database recorded the friendship of the ancient civilizations, the human civilizations that came from another universe to face the apocalypse together, and the providers of vibranium like Wakanda. In the eyes of the Egyptians, the Wakanda people were slaves who mined vibranium for them. The 5 ancient African tribes were all servants and slaves of the ancient Egyptians, monkey people. And the Egyptians thought of themselves as eagles, the descendants of the sky and the sun. In this war fortress, there are totems of the Egyptians, Huaxia, Babylonia, and even ancient India and Greece, and the totems that represent you. They don't have the right to be carved here. Turkara was enraged, and Steve frowned. But according to S., HIELD, as genetic research on various ethnic groups, the Egyptians are marked. That's because the ancient Egyptians and the current Egyptians are not the same race. This also applies to the ancient Greeks, the ancient Indians, and the research of the Revolutionary Alliance. Those ancient civilizations and the ethnic groups that claim to have inherited them are not the same race. The current Egyptians are the Semites, the race created by the Creator or God. That is, the race that walked out of Africa and was enlightened by Messiah. And the real ancient civilizations, other than the Huashia, Atlanteans, and Lemurians, no one else exists. The ancient Babylonians suffered the apocalypse because of the Tower of Babel, and their entire race was wiped out. The ancient Greek civilization was too close to Babylon and suffered heavy losses. The survivors may have retreated to Atlantis. The great flood that ancient Huashia suffered was probably also the apocalypse. Later, they were forced to forget their ancient technology and degenerate into a civilization to protect themselves, Chinong answered. All of the ancient civilizations were afraid of that existence, Chinong said emotionally. They once tried to unite together to face the test of the apocalypse, and they succeeded in ancient Egypt. But in Babylon they failed. That disaster directly led to the destruction of Babylon and the silence of the ancient civilization. Only then did modern humans replace the ancient humans and become the pillar of civilization on this planet. So, the predecessor of the Holy Shield Brotherhood actually failed, Chinong said loudly, because all of the ancient civilizations actually failed to be passed down. The ancestors of modern humans, the powerful primeval apes, faced extinction in the face of the apocalypse calamity, leaving behind only 5 ancient tribes. The ancient civilizations that the remnants of the ancient humans redeveloped also encountered the test of the apocalypse. Although they won once, they did not win a second time. They only left behind these relics and the descendants of the degenerated or hidden civilizations. Faced with the test of the apocalypse, they all failed. Chapter 1072. Anthony Edward Stark returned to his Ocean View mansion in a drunken stupor. Carrying 2 bottles of 25-year whiskey in his hand, he staggered as he opened the front door and fell head first onto the sofa. Chili Pepper appeared in the doorway of the living room and leaned against the doorframe to watch him. "Friday," Stark said vaguely. "Turn on the TV. Antonio." Little Pepper began to shout Stark's name. "You have brains, you have money, and you have me. You have the identity of an Avenger and an Iron Man, a child's dream. But now you're here drinking whiskey and destroying your own life. Why is this happening? What has robbed you of your courage? Get lost. I don't want to hear you yell," Stark said in a low voice. Little Pepper's face was dejected. She turned her head away, not wanting Tawny to see the tears in her eyes. She said in a low voice, "I'm going to quit." "Stark." Tawny did not answer. He hid his face under the sofa. As an artificial intelligence, Friday was obedient and quiet, not daring to make a sound. Little Chili Pepper finally gave up all hope. She turned around and prepared to leave. As she walked towards the door in her high heels, Stack's head that was buried under the sofa mumbled something inexplicable. "We're all going to die. The whole world will be dark. There is no hope." Little Pepper stopped, tears falling from her eyes. She turned back to Stark and said, "We will all die, but we still have hope. Only those who give up will give up hope." "You don't understand what I saw." "Pepper." Stark seemed unmoved. "I've already moved my things out." Little Pepper said, "I think I need to be alone to clear my head, and you need to be alone too. Live on with your whiskey. I don't care anymore." Pepper slammed the door and left. Tawny lifted his head from the sofa and poured himself a glass of whiskey. He said to Friday, "Add some ice, turn on the TV." The TV that took up an entire wall of his mansion was switched on. A mechanical hand took out ice cubes from the fridge and placed them into the wine glass. Friday hesitated and said, "Sir, your alcohol consumption today has exceeded the Federation's alcohol limit." Do you think it's your turn to lecture me? Stark scolded in annoyance. The voice of a news broadcast came from the television. It can be seen on the West Coast. We have received reports from amateur astronomy enthusiasts. From 8:00 in the morning to 6:00 in the afternoon, we were able to observe the floating pyramid with astronomical telescopes. According to some sources, it rose from Egypt. Thousands of locals witnessed the step pyramid opening up a passage, and the giant object, which was nearly a kilometer tall and hundreds of meters wide, flew out of it. Before that, the entire Western Hemisphere could see the projection of the eagle in the sky. This was the largest and most detailed UFO incident in human history. Where did it come from? Was it an alien spaceship lurking on Earth, or a masterpiece of an ancient civilization? Is it a miracle built by the Egyptian pharaohs, or is it evidence of aliens in Earth's history? It's the Cybertrons. The local named Sam vowed solemnly, about 4,000 years ago, 13 progenitor Cybertran elders came to Earth and enslaved the local residents to build the pyramids. They built this machine at the bottom of the pyramids, and the key to opening this machine is the energy matrix. Once the energy matrix is activated, the floating pyramid will turn the sun into a tinder and bring it back to save their planet. This is the aliens' conspiracy. The beautiful reporter continued the interview. Then how did you know all this? Sam said enthusiastically, when my grandfather was exploring the South Pole, he once discovered the leader of the Cybertronians, Megatron. It engraved the knowledge of the Cybertronians into my grandfather's glasses. One day, I put on my glasses and my Chevrolet changed shape. The laughter of the locals could be heard in the background of the interview. Come on, Sam, your grandfather is a shoemaker. He's never been to the South Pole. Do you still believe in your dream? Crazy Sam, your family doesn't have a Chevrolet sports car, only a broken Ford pickup truck. Why not? I picked it up from the garbage myself. Sam argued. The beautiful reporter was embarrassed and disheveled. Why did she have to interview a lunatic? The director quickly switched the scene back to the scene. An expert, who looked like a dog, was explaining. We all know about the existence of aliens. From the Battle of New York to the disaster of New York, it's natural that the ancient Egyptians had contact with aliens. In ancient Egypt, the image of the gods that the local people worshipped might have come from. The pharaohs claimed to be the children of God. They intermarried, and modern scientific research shows that the genes of the pharaohs. Stark raised his hand to turn off the TV. He said in a low voice, "Idiot. I'd rather listen to that lunatic's crazy talk. At least it's interesting. Those idiots always talk about aliens, but they don't know that right next to them, China, is a living alien country. Aliens are your neighbors, separated only by the Pacific Ocean." With a drunken look, Stack pulled out the information that Steve had asked him for. With familiarity, he chose a piece of vellum. On it was a drawing of a building that looked exactly like the floating pyramid on TV. Tony flipped over the piece of vellum. On the back of the paper were some seemingly useless graffiti and messy words. Stark stared at the graffiti of a spear and a shield for a long time. He suddenly stood up, went to the bathroom, and splashed a few handfuls of cold water on his face. He called Nick Fury and said, "One-eyed wolf, I need information about what Steve took from you. I won't trade him for wine." After getting the promise, Stark sat on the sofa and looked through the information that he was already very familiar with, waiting for the data from SHIE. He looked up the outdated information of the Magic Spear Bureau, inquired about Steve's movements, and asked the Department of Defense for information about the floating pyramid. He even called his old friend Crow. "Hey, isn't this the head of our arms dealers, the Man of Steel?" Crow crossed his legs on the desk, leaned back in his chair, and said to Stark, "It's rare for you to contact me, benefactor. Let's talk about the past later." Stark said straightforwardly, "I want what happened to Steve at your place. Video, text, or you can tell me in person. Anything is fine. Stark Industries will support your vibranium futures. You don't care about that poor king? Crow laughed. Your comrade, Captain America, is very supportive of him. He has brought us a lot of trouble. No one will support a dictator. What era are we in now? The people don't need a king. Stark said, send me the information. You know my email address. Chapter 1073. In the command room of the floating pyramid, Steve was holding a shield and doing weapon adaptation training. Hawkeye sat next to him, modifying his bow and arrows. Seeing Steve holding the ancient Egyptian shield, he laughed and said, Every time you throw a shield, there is always a new one coming up. Captain America's body should be that shield. Or should you change your name to Shield Man? Steve buckled the shield and said, Don't make fun of it. This is a relic of our ancestors. SHIELD uses it as a symbol. Hawkeye said, But you use it to fight. If you break it, Nick Fury will not forgive you. This shield was born to protect mankind. Steve picked up the shield and said, Now it is just used for what it should be used for. I still remember a sentence I heard when I was training at SHIELD. Hawkeye said, We are a shield that protects mankind between the known world and the unknown world. At this time, Chin-Ong came over and said to them, Come here. It's time for a meeting. When they arrived at the venue, there were already many people there. Chin-Ong said, In order to deal with the crisis on the African continent and prevent the restart of the apocalypse, we launched the floating fortress built by the ancient civilization and rebuilt the Holy Shield Brotherhood to protect mankind. The spear is in the east, the shield is in the west. Only by gathering the forces of the east and the west can the Holy Shield Brotherhood be a complete brotherhood. Captain Steve and I, as the initiators of the two sides of the conflict, invited Prince Thor of Asgard, Kamartaj Supreme Wizard Strange, former SHIELD agent Hawkeye, as well as Sam the Falcon, Kamartaj Wizard Lao Wang, Black Panther Turkara of Wakanda, one of the 5 ancient guardian tribes. Let me introduce you to a few new members. As soon as Chen Ang's voice fell, several people pushed open the door of the conference room and came in. Steve and others turned their heads and saw a surprised look on their faces. Hawkeye stared at one of them with a complicated look. Chin-Ong noticed Hawkeye's look and smiled. There are a lot of acquaintances, right? He pointed at a voluptuous, red-haired female agent and introduced her to everyone. Special Commissioner of the Soviet Union of the Revolutionary Union, Natasha. You should be very familiar with her. She is your former colleague. As the Soviet Union's Special Commissioner, he joined the Battle of the Holy Shield. And the European Community Commissioner, Merlin and Arthur. Natasha went straight to the round table, pulled out a chair, and sat down. Merlin, the Special Commissioner of the European Community, was an old man with a big beard, wearing a cloak and holding a long cane. Arthur, on the other hand, was a square-faced man with thick eyebrows and a two-handed sword on his back. I'm Kong Keenan, a special agent from the China side of the Revolutionary Alliance. Like Natasha, he's a former member of the Liberators, and he's now joining the Brotherhood of the Holy Shield as a special commissioner. Kong Keenan was now a young soldier, full of heroic spirit, with a very obvious military style. Even though he was sitting on a chair, his back was involuntarily straight. Just when everyone thought that everyone had arrived, the last person walked in on her high heels. Steve stood up in surprise when he saw her. Little Chilly, just call me Kelly. Little Chilly shrugged indifferently. I'm completely disappointed in that bastard. Just in time for someone to invite me here. I thought about it if someone invited me to save the world. Then why not? Little Chilly laughed heartily. Steve pulled out the seat next to her, and after Little Chilly sat down, representing the Brotherhood of the Holy Shield was reconstituted. Chin-Ong looked around at everyone present, then turned to Little Chilly and asked, You don't mind wearing this in battle, do you? He stretched out his hand, and a set of steel armor rose from the center of the round table. Chin-Ong introduced it. This is the work of a child that Anthony Stark met when he visited the Revolutionary Alliance and was replicated. The child modified it as a graduation project for his handicraft class. I hope Mr. Stark won't sue him for patent infringement. I'm not that kind of woman. Little Chilly replied generously. I hope that when I wear it in battle, I can give Stark a little inspiration. I've already talked to Nick Fury about the Brotherhood of the Holy Shield. He said that as a member of the Divine Shield, he will give us support. SHIELD. S-base equipment, materials, and personnel can be coordinated and borrowed. The Revolutionary Alliance has also expressed their support for us. They will support some of the materials and technology of the former Holy Spear Bureau. So, Chin-Ong gestured to Little Chilly and said, Don't worry about not being able to afford it. Stark only has one group supporting his toy, and you now have the endorsement of the Brotherhood of the Holy Shield, which is supported by both the East and the West. This floating battleship will be our logistics base, but although this floating battleship is powerful, some of its technology is outdated. It will be remodeled and supported by the Republic of Republic. If you are willing, you can also participate in the maintenance and remodeling. All right, let's talk about small talk later. Chun-Ong kept the iron suit into the armory. A ray of light projected from the center of the round table, turning into a lifelike projection of the African continent. Wakanda, the Ndapaya tribe, and the Haitian voodoo cult headquarters were specially projected with silver light. Steve answered, We now know that there are 5 ancient tribes that guard the apocalypse. 4 of them have unknown identities. They are the Wakanda tribe that guard the Knights of War, the voodoo dolls that guard the Knights of Death, the voodoo cultists that were originally located in Benin but later moved to America and Haiti, the Ndapaya tribe that guard the Knights of Famine, the Stairway of the Sun. These 3 tribes have been overrun by Ebony Throat's collusion with the arms dealer Ulysses Crow, the Kamartaj trader Baron Mordo, and the Atlanteans. The symbol of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse has fallen into Ebony Throat's hands. What's left is the Ebola tribe, which has been preserved in the Plague Knight's power, which has not fallen into Ebony Throat's hands. Ebony Throat probably doesn't know where the last ancient tribe that has preserved the power of the apocalypse Messiah is. Tekera pondered for a moment before saying, In fact, even though I'm the leader of one of the 5 ancient tribes and the king of Wakanda, I still don't know where the last ancient tribe is, the tribe that preserved the power of destiny. It's as if my ancestors had erased all traces of them. Therefore, as an alien, it's even more impossible for Ebony Throat to know where they are. They should still be safe. Chun-Ong added, In fact, only the Holy Shield Brotherhood knows where they are. But for the sake of confidentiality, I can't tell everyone here. So now they only have one target, the Ebola tribe. Natasha propped her elbows on the table and rested her chin on her hand. Yes, Chun-Ong continued. And we suspect that the reason they haven't made a move against Ebola is because they want to use it as a trap to lure us out. Then, through us, they will learn the location of the last seal. But even if this is a trap, we can't refuse it. Because Vibranium, the Stairway of the Sun, and the voodoo puppets are all reviving. Steve asked, Is that so? Yes, the Stairway of the Sun will unlock the evolutionary lock of nearby creatures. Vibranium will begin to slowly revive and become active, solving all the material problems and unlocking the technological lock of human civilization. As for the voodoo doll, it will transform the people nearby into another state and unlock the soul lock. Its mimetic effect will begin to spread on a large scale, starting with those voodoo wizards. Previously, the Stairway of the Sun alone created the mutant brooder that almost destroyed humanity. If we delay any longer, the consequences will be unimaginable. Therefore, we have to beat them at their own game, completely destroy the Ebola tribe, and reseal what the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse left behind. Chun-Ong's tone was solemn. If we fail, in human history, the only civilization that faced the power seal of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse at the same time was the extinct ancient civilization of Babylon. Because of the Tower of Babel project, It was thought to be the signal to face the test of the apocalypse. There are no records of that disaster. We only know that the disaster destroyed all the ancient civilizations that worked together and caused the entire ancient human civilization to fall into silence, leading to the rise of modern humans. Only now do the Atlanteans dare to show their heads. I don't want us to face a test of this level, Steve said. Perhaps it's even worse. What if the secret of the fifth tribe is also known by Ebony Throat? Chapter 1074. In the city of the dead in Egypt, a mysterious hooded man wandered around the place where Chin Ong and Strange were capturing the voodoo wizards. He pushed open the door of a large hole and walked in, closing the fearful gazes of the locals behind him. The room was still as gloomy as ever. The voodoo wizards had left behind all kinds of animal bones. There were organs and strange things soaked in medicinal liquid, dried animal products, herbs and black magic materials taken from the bodies of dead people. The mysterious man slowly took off his hood, revealing a black face. It was Baron Mordo, who had just destroyed the voodoo cult's base camp. Coming to Africa, he could blend in with the locals without feeling out of place, but he still chose a conspicuous wizard attire to show his inner sense of honor as a wizard. Mordo was a pitiful man. He had been following the guidance of his teacher, the Ancient One, all his life, following the path of the Ancient One, but in the end he realized that the Ancient One had already betrayed the path he claimed. Mordo! A voice suddenly sounded behind him. Baron Mordo turned around abruptly, only to see Strange sitting in the darkness, looking at him. You knew I would come here. Mordo leaned against the table and looked at Strange. I joined an organization. Strange said calmly. They are very resourceful and well-informed. Egypt is our base camp. It is impossible for you to move around here without our eyes. The Paragon Wizard never joins other people's organizations. He will always be the leader, Mordo said. Strange, however, disagreed. The Paragon Wizard never sets these rules for himself. Other than the responsibility of the Paragon Wizard, we have no restrictions, and we don't need any restrictions. That's why I'm the Paragon Wizard, and you're not. You care too much about the commandments you set for yourself. Without commandments, acting recklessly like the Ancient One will bring disaster. Mordo said loudly. That's why the Ancient One died. He did it to protect the world. Strange shouted. He noticed the symbol that appeared between Mordo's eyebrows and said in surprise, You said that, but you also sided with Dom's Moo. I never understood why you were involved in this matter. It turns out that it was because of Dom Moo's orders that you became his lackey. I just made a deal with it, Mordo said. I already understand the mage's mission. Ancient One was wrong. What we are protecting is not this small planet and the humans on it. Humans have been destroying themselves, and no one can protect them. What we are really protecting is the unknown world, the balance between the mysterious and the known world. What we should revere is the great law of equilibrium. Dom Moo also understands this. Although the greed of darkness always makes it want to devour our world, I will still stand up and fight against it at this time. But when Dom Moo protects the entire universe, including the balance of the dark plane, I should also lend a hand. Thanos, they are saving this universe. But Thanos' goal is to kill half of all life in this universe. Strange said angrily. Mordo didn't care. Life was too insignificant. When mages looked at the entire universe, they would discover many great things. Space, dimensions, time, planets, matter, energy. Too many great things perfectly formed the entire world, and what maintained them was balance. Balance created and maintained everything. Once balance no longer existed, all the elements would clash, and everything would be destroyed and cease to exist. At that time, how could life exist alone? This was what Mordo realized. Mages should not focus on the insignificant individual life that was constantly being born and dying. Instead, they should focus on the balance that maintained everything behind it. and life was only a weight that maintained the balance. Although it was necessary, more or less, was the result of the law of equilibrium. Mordo just replied, I once wanted to follow the Ancient One to destroy the darkness, but after realizing that the Ancient One and Damu were just two sides of the balance between light and darkness, I realized that what we should really protect was balance. Mages are not nannies, not servants of this planet, not the guardians of mere humans. What we should work for is something greater. Strange opened his palm, and a circle of runes appeared in his palm. Strange said, As the Sorcerer Supreme, I have the responsibility to clean up the traitors among the mages. It was I who led you to Kamar-Taj back then. Mordo stretched out his hands and pulled out the scepter of the Tribunal of Life from his sleeves. Strange suddenly interrupted, It seems that you have taken a lot of good things from Kamar-Taj. Mordo was taken aback, then continued, It was I who taught you magic, leading you into the mysterious palace of magic. These things are not yours. I have a share of them as well. I am also a disciple of the Ancient One. But you betrayed him. It was he who betrayed me first. Mordo said angrily, I respected him so much, but he hid it from me. He hid the true path and power of mages. I once led you into the palace of mages, Mordo said to Strange. Now, I will teach you the true path of mages. Shameless boasting. Strange pulled out the magic whip that was coming to life, and with one lash, the entire world turned upside down. The city of the dead split into countless fragments and reassembled like Lego bricks. The nearby pillars formed countless geometric patterns, and space lost the meaning of up, down, left, and right. Mordo and Strange jumped around in the complex geometric space, exchanging blows from time to time. While Strange was using spells to reconstruct the terrain so that Mordo could only move on the path he had planned, he was also using the power of the Eye of Agamotto to travel through time, the surrounding space and time forming a complex maze that was being deconstructed. The maze formed in space, coupled with the fragmentation of time, trapped Mordo in it, unable to escape. However, Strange was still careless. When he separated the distance between the two of them again, Mordo jumped into the air, using the water boots of Leap on his feet to jump into the air. Golden ripples appeared under his feet as if he was stepping on something solid. Using the force to change his direction, he crossed the seemingly insurmountable barrier, nimbly changing angles around Strange, and swung his staff at Strange's face. But when the scepter of the Tribunal of Life hit Strange, his figure turned into broken light and shadow like the surface of water. At this time, Strange's real figure appeared behind Mordo, the long whip in his hand wrapped around Mordo's neck, and he shouted, Don't move! Mordo opened his hands, placed them on both sides of his shoulders, and smiled. Not bad, you've improved. I didn't learn everything from you. Strange said, After we parted, I've improved a lot, and I'm no longer that clumsy apprentice, but it's not enough. A face suddenly appeared behind Mordo's head, speaking to Strange. Suddenly, a few pale hands with very dirty nails and deformed joints reached out from behind Strange's head, piercing through the hair at the back of his head and grabbing his face. Strange tightened his right hand, and the magic energy whip in his hand cut off Mordo's neck. But Baron Mordo suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed his head. His head was held in his hand, and he said, But after leaving the Ancient One, I've also learned a lot. Black magic. Strange's face was almost completely covered by those hands. His eyes looked at Mordo through the gaps between his fingers, and he said sadly, Not only did you join Damu, but you also made a deal with Mephitis. Yes, Damu introduced me to him. I signed a contract with him, using a part of my soul to exchange for its power for everyone, and to pick up the black magic of the Middle Ages. And Mordo put his head back on his head and stretched out a hand. It was covered with bone spurs and black scales, like a lizard's claw, burning with pale flames. Satan asked me to send his regards to the Revolutionary Alliance. He said that he no longer wanted to be questioned in hell. This is a great insult to the Lord of Hell. You also signed a contract with Satan and exchanged it for hell magic. Strange could no longer see Mordo, and the hand grabbing him from behind his head had already covered his face. Baron Mordo's demonic hand had pierced through Strange's chest. But at this time, a transparent and colorless blade formed by spatial distortion had also pierced through Mordo's chest. Another Strange stood behind Mordo, and the symbol of Damu's dark space appeared between his brows. "You're just like the Ancient One," Mordo said. "Both so hypocritical. This is the power of the Eye of Agamotto. It's your overflowing time, isn't it?" Mordo's body split in half from the wound. The two Hebs turned to look at Strange, then took a step forward and fused together, forming another complete Mordo. "Why didn't I suffer from the damage of time?" Mordo said. "You should have deprived me of all time when you stabbed me. You must be very puzzled, because I haven't read the Book of Wailishin, nor have I obtained the complete Book of Cagliostro. But before I left, when I sneaked into Ancient One's bookshelf, I accidentally found an incomplete magic book, Xianjun's 7 secret scriptures, and I found a secret from Ancient One's notes." Strange's expression suddenly changed. "You saw the notes that Ancient One hid with magic? The origin of Kamar Taj. We are all servants of that existence. The Apocalypse, or the primordial heavenly demon, also known as Xian. Xian and Jun, the primordial heavenly demon, and Laozi left Hangapass and discussed the Tao in Luguan, passing down Yixi's Luguan Tao lineage and Yangzhou school. Later, Yangzhou school did not fall behind, and one of their Taoist academic factions began to focus on spells. They inherited the only notes of that discussion, Yixi's 7 chapters of Xianjun, and no other secret knowledge was recorded. They are our ancestors. This knowledge was mistakenly recorded by Sithorn, one of the mages who read them. Those secret knowledge have no names. It records the knowledge of the gates to different dimensional worlds and the construction of dimensional gates, such as the Dark Gate and the Well of the Sun. Some knowledge was sealed because it was too powerful. It is a part of darkness, and the Sorcerer Supreme calls it the Book of Darkness. The part of light is known as the Book of Wailishin. But the Book of Darkness has long been missing. It has long been stolen, Strange said. Chapter 1075. The Ancient One has been searching for it for many years. Strange said, "You can't do what the Ancient One can't do in such a short period of time." "No, it's simpler than you think." Mordo smiled. "Because of my deal with Mephitis, he gave me this information. After all, the sorcerer Sithorn who recorded his secret spells is a demon just like them. I found this book in the basement of the ancestral home of Mephitis's caretaker, the new ghost rider, Johnny Blaze. It seems that you have a good relationship with them. In fact, the power of the Kamartaj sorcerers comes from different dimensions. We collect energy from other dimensions, shape it into spells, and use it to attack the enemy. This is the concept of that existence, and we have fully inherited it," Mordo said. "You can't imagine the power of the knowledge recorded in the Dark Book. The essence of the Sorcerer Supreme is to make deals. Make deals with the rulers of those strange dimensions to get their help and obtain energy from those dimensional planes. You made a deal with Wilshendi and obtained the energy needed for Kamartaj's spells. Ancient One made a deal with Dormammu to steal dark power from the dark dimension to extend his life. The power of each dimension can be forged into different weapons. This is the difference between spells. Now, I have the magic power of Wilshendi's dimension, Dormammu's dimension, Mephitis' dimension, and even Satan's dimension hell. My power has surpassed yours. Strange," Morton said, "except for the Eye of Agamotto on your chest. I have long surpassed you in all aspects. The tragedy of the Ancient One is that he has no bargaining chips of his own. He always borrows the power of others, but he tries to stand in his own position. This is the root of the tragedy. He thinks he is standing firm, but in fact, he is a clown who wavers between giants. Just like how you try to please Mephitis and Satan at the same time, trying to waver between them to protect your sad soul. Strange asked sharply, not allowing him to insult the ancient one he respected. Morton fell silent. After a long time he sighed and said, "Yes, I can't get out of this predicament either. But the grimoire of darkness helped me find a direction. It recorded a magic experiment of that existence. Using great power, it opened a door to a dimension where time was almost still. Then it completely burned the power of a star, and with the sun as a coordinate, it used the endless energy absorbed from the well to cast a special magic circle on the sun. It was a fixed well that led to that dimension. This is one of the ultimate spells, Sun Well. In a dimension where time flows at Planck speed, the fluctuations of vacuum could be easily observed. A pair of positrons and electrons would rapidly form and then vanish. If such a door could really be opened, it means... Strange muttered a little absent-mindedly. This means mages can easily obtain energy and matter from it. I will no longer be controlled by anyone. Morton said, mages will be truly great. We will be like Dom Mu and Wilshendi, becoming the masters of dimensions. Strange calculated. The energy density of the vacuum can be as high as... This idea is completely feasible. But how do you find the coordinates of the time halt plane? Where do you get the powerful energy to open the dimensional door? How do you shape a star and make it the mouth of a well? How do you complete such a powerful spell as the Sunwell? Mordo said, I have an idea for all of this. I can complete it. Then prove it to me. Strange seemed tempted. Mordo thought for a while and decided to reveal his trump card. With the Eye of Agamotto, you can lock onto that strange dimension. Only the power of the primordial time stone can discover the universe, where time is infinitely close to stopping. The tesseract of the universe has the powerful power to open dimensional doors, and Damu will provide a star as the mouth of a well. I will temporarily open the dimensional door to the well of eternity, and use the power of that most powerful spell to shape the Sunwell. Strange heard Mordo's plan and was silent for a long time before saying, You're crazy. Mordo raised his head in disbelief. You are a mage. No mage will refuse this spell. But I am first and foremost a human. Strange said, You have been completely controlled by that existence's magic to the point that you have forgotten. He is an existence countless times darker than Damu. Compared to him, Damu is still a child, or rather an ant. This is more dangerous than coming into contact with the dark dimension. Back then, Kamartaj's most talented occult mage, Sithorn, became crazy because he read this part of the knowledge. In the end, he made a dangerous act that almost destroyed the world. Unlike you, he was not crazy enough to want to build a sunwell. He just wanted to come into contact with the legendary, inexhaustible source of energy for mages, the ultimate creation of matter and energy created by that existence, the well of eternity. Sithorn bewitched many people and even obtained the support of that generation's supreme mage. They also believed that mages were people who collected energy from different dimensions and could cast it into weapons. So they completed a ritual and came into contact with the well of eternity. Then, Sithorn became an evil god and Kamartaj was almost destroyed? That endless darkness is not something that human souls can come into contact with. This is why the previous generations of supreme mages wanted to seal the dark book. Strange said, Mordor, you have fallen into darkness. Mordor lowered his head and laughed softly. When he raised his head and laughed, Strange's expression became sorrowful. Mordor smiled. In that case, I can only snatch it. He raised the scepter of the Tribunal of Life in his hand. The meaning was self-evident. Strange pulled out an energy whip. The full name of this spell was Crimson Magic Belt of Cedarak. But Mordor laughed. You are no match for me at all. I was just playing with you before. Now I'm going all out. Black smoke and magma flowed all over his body, and his figure became very tall as he transformed into a demon. Demons were strange existences that existed between soul and matter. So Mordor reached out and grabbed the energy whip, pulling Strange toward him. Strange raised the runic shield created by magic, but Mordor's huge demonic claws easily penetrated the runic shield, pierced through Strange's chest, and grabbed his soul. Strange felt the immense and blazing pain coming from his soul, and could not help but cry out in pain. But looking at Mordor's ferocious head, he laughed in pain. "Mordor, I will watch you fall into darkness with my own eyes." Mordor showed a puzzled look, and then felt his body suddenly being torn apart. An unparalleled power penetrated the indestructible body of the demon, and a wave of weakness from his soul spread throughout his body. Unmatched, unstoppable, and powerless to escape, the body of a demon created by magic was easily torn apart like a piece of paper in a level. 18 Typhoon. Morton fell. He struggled to turn his head and saw a young man floating in the air. Kong Keenan casually imprisoned Mordor, and Strange heard the angry roar of Mordor's soul. "Strange, you actually betrayed the honor of mages in a duel." Strange panted, feeling the burning pain from his soul, and bared his teeth. "Mordor, when you appeared alone, you should have thought of the risk of being defeated one by one. Yes, why can't the side of justice use tactics to separate you, surround you, and eliminate you one by one? First remove the wings, and then attack the core in one fell swoop. This is the strategy of the Holy Shield Brotherhood against you. You don't deserve to be heroes." Mordor's soul said weakly. Kong Keenan's face was full of righteousness. "Dr. Strange, don't talk about morality with criminals. We enforcers don't do that." As a hero, Strange still could not get used to the powerful logic of the ruling state's violent organization. As a soldier of the Republic of Republic, an enforcer, and a liberator, the style of the state's violent organization had been engraved into Kong Keenan's bones. He was used to using the power of the state to crush criminals. Chapter 1076. Are you sure he won't cause us any trouble? Steve looked at Johnny Blaze's photo. It was a picture of Johnny Blaze riding a stunt motorcycle and leaping over dozens of trucks. There were also some photos of a skeleton knight riding a flaming motorcycle that had been washed with a special potion. If a man sells his soul to the devil, freedom has nothing to do with him. Chun-On leaned back in his office chair and tidied up his personal belongings that the PRL had sent over. Don't think that Johnny Blaze is a hero or an anti-hero just because he killed a lot of bad guys and judged their souls. In fact, he's just a puppet driven by the devil. His conscience is just a tool the devil uses to play with his soul. So his position doesn't matter. What matters is Mephisto's position. That devil can't be on our side. Steve sighed. Chun-On carefully hung a hockey mask on the wall and said, "So, we have to pull out its claws and teeth first. The souls that Mephisto's tempted are mainly in Europe. The PRL and the European community will be responsible for dealing with them. In the new continent, although Mephisto's is not as deeply rooted as in old Europe and has many trump cards, there's no doubt that the number of worshippers controlled by the devil is still astonishing. When I was in the insurance business in America, I dealt with some cults that worshipped him, so I know a lot about this." Steve curiously picked up an old-fashioned videotape and casually asked, "What did you send Dr. Strange and Kong Keenan to do?" "Deal with his senior brother. Let them handle Kamartaj's family matters themselves. I sent Kong Keenan just in case. In case Strange is unwilling to kill his senior brother, you'd better put down that videotape." "Oh." Steve put it in front of him and observed it carefully, but he did not find anything wrong. What's so special about it? This is a sealed meme carrier. There's some bad information recorded in it. I can show it to you. Then, at midnight, you'll receive some special phone calls. 7 days later, a woman will come to your door to comfort you. Be careful. If the meme leaks out, it'll be very troublesome to seal it again. You've collected a lot of weird stuff. Steve picked up another glass jar. He looked into the jar and saw some humus soil. There seemed to be some tiny insects crawling in it. He asked curiously, "What is this?" There was a serious case of parasitic infection at JFK International Airport. All the passengers on the plane were infected and died. Later, the insurance company sent me to deal with the insurance issues of the passengers on the plane. After investigation, it was found that the parasite originated from an undeclared piece of luggage on the plane, a wooden coffin that had just been excavated. The parasite came from there. Later, we had to burn the entire plane. We also sent planes to use incendiary bombs to clean up the soil at the place where the coffin was found, completely eliminating the possible source of infection. This is the last sample of the rotten soil in the coffin. It contains the parasite protozoa. We can't let it come into contact with the human body. Steve was shocked. We should get rid of this thing. You can't just store it in a completely unprotected glass bottle. Don't worry. It can't be any safer now. Chun-Ong hammered the glass jar hard, startling Steve. He laughed and said, "You think this is a glass jar? No, even a tank isn't as strong as this." Steve took out another envelope. He waved it at Chun-Ong and asked, "What's this dangerous thing?" "It's an ordinary envelope. There's only the most ordinary note in the envelope. On the note, there's a name and a fear about it. It's nothing at all. It's just the name of a good old man on Elm Street. If you want to take it away, I can also give you a hockey mask that embodies motherly love. You also collect dolls?" Steve took out a very old plastic doll covered in wounds and dust. "Is this something like a voodoo doll from Voodoo?" "It does look like it. I've been studying how it gained life and soul. Voodoo wizards are just a hypothesis, but it hasn't come into contact with the history of voodoo magic." Chun-Ong explained to Steve while carefully placing several parchment books and bamboo slips on the bookshelf. Steve put down the doll and noticed a flower pot on the windowsill. Inside it was an orchid with straight stems and orange flowers. "I've never seen this plant before. The Stairway of the Sun. It was just rescued from the Dapaya ruins a few days ago. Should I put it here?" Steve asked. Chun-Ong poured water on it and said, "There's some in the lab, but I think it should be exposed to sunlight, so I brought one to the office. Maybe it can protect against radiation." As Chun-Ong placed the Stairway of the Sun beside the computer, the flower of the Stairway of the Sun that was originally facing the sun suddenly turned towards the computer. Steve noticed that Chun-Ang's computer screen suddenly changed. In that instant, he discovered that the Stairway of the Sun seemed to be connected to the internet. Steve leapt up from his chair. "There's something wrong with this thing." He told Chun-Ong, "Yes. It's gathering information online." Chun-Ong replied calmly, "It's a famine variant. You're just going to leave it defenseless beside the computer?" Steve anxiously asked. Chun-Ong didn't mind. "Steve, when this plant was plundered from the Dapaya tribe, you should already know that it's out of control. We only have a small portion of its remnant roots here, while Thanos and his allies have thousands of times more. The worst has already happened. Do you think I'm absolutely safe just because I've carefully guarded this thing? Right now, it's more important to understand them. It's precisely because I've come into contact with them that I understand that the Stairway of the Sun is actually a species with collective consciousness. This Stairway of the Sun of mine is merely an insignificant tentacle of their collective consciousness. Right now, it can only communicate with the computer. But if it's this plant, it's like a gigantic signal receiver that can receive global electromagnetic waves. Their complex neural network can be connected to our network. I've already identified their unique network signals and sent them to the ICLEI and SHIELD for them to lock onto these signals and strengthen their defenses, so as to prevent more confidential information from leaking out. You should be thankful that this plant hasn't fully awakened. Its signal reception is still instinctive and doesn't have any technology to speak of. But once it truly awakens, it can actively manipulate electromagnetic signals and is fully capable of invading any network on Earth, as long as it has wireless signals. Steve was speechless. He saw Cheonong place a specimen labeled Fujian in Japanese, a jar of meat in a corrosive liquid, on a shelf. He reached for the camera and briefcase next to him and said to Steve, "Take your shield. Let's go meet that Johnny Blaze." Cheonong picked up a shabby voodoo doll, patted the dust off it, and said, "Bring it along. I want to see what special characteristics the soul of the famous Ghost Rider has." "You plan to seal his soul into this doll." Steve picked up the divine shield and put it on his back. He looked at Cheonong, who had a camera around his neck, glasses, and a briefcase under his arm. He looked like a reporter, but he was holding an irrelevant rag doll in his hand. Steve felt very awkward. "Yes," Cheonong said. "Since it's an evil spirit, we have to be careful and seal it. This voodoo doll is a trophy I left behind when I cleaned up the wizards in Haiti a few years ago. The soul of the witch's heart demon was sealed here in the past. Later, it was consumed during an experiment. Speaking of which, it seems that half of Jonathan Blaze's soul is still mine." Cheonong thought to himself, "I'll have to go through the experiment records of the Spirit of Vengeance when I get back. In any case, whether it's the batch I made or the one that naturally reproduced. Mephitos used my property as an experimental subject. All humans are my property, so there's no doubt that I have ownership of the soul in his hands. It's decided happily. I'll ask him for it back when I have time."